Hey everyone, Lash Luke here again with Pie Chance to do the weekly dose of manga chapters. Back on a Sunday once again.
Hey guys, yeah, we're on a regular Sunday schedule this time and ready to talk about these new chapters.
Yeah, I've just got to say right off the bat, I really enjoyed a lot of these chapters this week. I thought this week was very, very, very solid. Don't know about you.
I kind of was a mixed bag for me personally. Like some
Okay,
series were, but I know we also read like different things. For example, some of the series that we aren't really going to talk about, like Earthchilds, for example, I think they're finally doing the thing that I've been waiting for them to do, but it could also signal that they're possibly going to get axed. And then
yeah,
in for Blue Box was actually like a really good chapter.
yeah, I was surprised by that, and just looking on Twitter, Abby Soul will be there. Will be coming as well in a bit, so that's something to look forward to. One of the people. Oh, and there we go. We've got Hayes in the chat for first comment. So
Okay,
yeah,
hey Hayes, glad you could
yeah,
join. Yeah, I'm just sharing our stream link a bit while we're talking, but glad you could join us, Hayes.
yeah. Earthchild has the
Um,
potential to be X. Doesn't surprise me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because Hayes did say he loved it because he went back and watched the stream from last week. He loved your Earthchild rant.
oh, is that so? Well, hey, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad I put a timestamp for that one, in particular for anybody who wanted to see that.
Yeah. So
Um,
I
but
guess
yes, Earthchild, interestingly, I did. I think what I was thinking it was going to do. And then for the other series, like Sakamoto Days is as solid as usual. And then the rest, like P6, was kind of meh for this week. So, yeah, like I said, mixed bag for me personally. But those are the series that we aren't going to be talking about. Let's talk about the series that we are going to talk about.
all right. Yeah, yes, the rant was dope. More folks need to listen to it.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And yeah, even on Reddit, people are still like wondering what's going on with this series. It's because I think most people are like, yeah, it's going downhill from here.
Yeah, and also its first ranking wasn't at all very good, especially since Akane didn't drop a rank. It's still very solidly in the sixth slot.
Yeah, Child isn't at the bottom just yet. Kind of like I think Skyzed was saying it. Yeah, it'll probably be in the bottom in the next few issues because its first chapter was fine. It felt a little weird because it's almost like a one shot more than like a beginning of a series, and then after that, I think it'll start ranking low. But
Yeah,
anyway, we should probably start with some of the series now.
yeah, we should. So, which series would you like to start with first?
Yeah, so I was thinking that Duran might be an interesting one because I've been
Yeah,
going through Reddit. I'm actually going through it right now, just seeing what people are saying about the chapters this week, as I usually do. And this one, interestingly, a lot of people said based on what happens, it might be a sign that the series could be getting axed, but I'm not too sure about that.
yeah, I was kind of mixed on that because when I was reading the chapter on my way home from work today, I was like, oh my god! I was just thinking as when certain character got defeated and killed, I was thinking, oh my, I think this is something Party Jams will be like. What just happened?
Oh, really?
I
Okay.
think
Well,
we'll get to it when we get to it, but
okay, cool.
yeah, yeah, we'll
I'll
bring it
just
up.
pull up the chapter, and I'll be kind of switching forth. Let's see, Duran. There it is. Chapter 18.
Rage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Um,
And as expected, this chapter is starting off with Yuji because we finished off with Dora and Toda last time.
yeah. So we have Yuji basically being pulled away to where the where this was where the samurai officers got killed, right? This place.
Yeah, well, he wasn't a officer, but yes, this is where that samurai Mine, I believe his name is, got killed off along with all those hostages. It's like their
Yeah.
base of operations, and I think they talk about that actually in a page.
Yeah. So we have Yuji basically being thrown into the area, and before he knows that he's on being attacked by the other Mononoke, including our favorite Grimjow type character, um, a-
Yeah.
and he's like, "Oh, hey, I remember you. Awesome we meet again." And Yuji just like completely just like from what I can see in the panel on page 3, it's just like, who are you?
Really? Let me just check an
Like,
expression because
it
I thought
just
you reckon. Oh yeah, I guess kind of yeah.
yeah, he's kind of like he's got that kind of like
Oh wait, no, but no, he does. Okay, but in the next page,
yeah,
ahead, he does say he remembers him.
yeah, he does remember him, but he's kind of got that like that expression, always got that expression of like, do I know you? That
Yeah.
sarcastic expression. Yeah, and then we have the two other Monoke who are like, "Oh, you sure seem lively for having just woken up." Hidahisha, and they drew Yuji here with with the seductiveness, basically being. And of course, she has to do it in song as well. I just love that quirk about this Monoke. No matter what she says, it's always in song.
Yep.
So then we have Yuji saying like, "Oh, there's 3 of them. Yeah, I figured it would be a trap." And again, he's using this as like a way of like, why am I popular with these guys, but I'm not popular with actual humans? It just doesn't make any sense. Um,
Yeah. Poor Eugene.
he just can't
It is
catch a
actually
break.
kind of. It is really funny, actually. The just dramatic irony of being the strongest makes you popular with the enemy rather than the people that you're fighting with.
Yeah.
But it also
So
makes sense in context.
yeah, it would make sense in context. So he's asking, "Oh, where are the hostages?" And they're like, "Oh, there are no hostages. So we tricked you, but yeah, there were hostages before you came here, but we killed them, and Tainemon ate a lot of them as well." Uh, um, and they're like, "Oh, you're way too gullible to be a samurai. You don't really get us, do you? But you were so mesmerized by me that I can't." That you can't think, and basically just scolding him and calling him an idiot. But Yuji is just having none of it, and it just like one of the most badass moments I've got to say in the chapter. He's just like, "Okay, enough, I get it. Shut up," and just see this array of awe just for ejected from him, in which like causes them like these Mononoke who are just like so cocky and so arrogant of themselves. It causes them like, oh my, what is this energy? And I just love that how it's like he doesn't even change his expression as well. He's just like, yeah, now shut up, and they're just like, oh my word, yeah, this is something dangerous.
Yep. Which I mean, that definitely caught me off guard. I mean, obviously, I expected Yuji to like be strong, but he's so strong, he's scaring them,
Yeah,
and that's for good reason, as we'll learn this chapter.
yeah, for very good reason. And um, they conclude, oh, so this samurai officer, a mere human with this much supernatural energy, and they're like, okay, yeah, we don't need to hold back here. We can go out as full on as we want. As we see them starting to attack him with Hidahisha using his 24 consecutive roaring snake missiles. You see that in the words of Death Battle to with Saitama versus Popeye. Yes, Saitama, that is an attack name, not normal punch.
Yeah, that is true. I
Yeah,
remember that.
yeah. But of course, Yuji being Yuji is able to dodge it, and he goes over to and he finds himself over at the Spider Mononoke. And she's like, "Oh, I'm afraid I'm way out of your league here," and is able to stick him down. But of course, again, this being Yuji, he's able to just nullify that, throw himself like 20 feet in the air from what it looks like, 20 feet in the air, and slice her completely in half. I'm just like, how strong is this guy?
Yep. I mean, I wasn't expecting that much because we've seen Yuji fight before when we first saw him fight Hidehishe. But then when we see this and like what comes next, I was quite surprised. But I don't want to jump to that one just yet because of what happens like on page 13 or 12 to 13 where he activates his supernatural blade, because that was the thing you and I were talking about last time he used it, right? Because we
Yeah,
were like, hold on, if he's using Mononoke to fight, why is everyone so concerned about Kusanagi?
yeah,
I think
and
this chapter kind of gives us an explanation.
yeah, it kind of does give it like it's so powerful that it could potentially overwhelm the person, and we'll get into it when we get into it, but when we get to page 15, like it seems to be that the more supernatural energy someone has around them, the more of like negative emotions come out of them, if that makes sense.
Possibly. I mean,
Yeah.
the other thing is on page 14, they seem to describe it as drawing on Mononoke's power with the sword imbued with the energy. So it sounds like, I think what we thought in the beginning was that there was like a Mononoke living in the sword, similar to like Zanpakuto.
Yeah,
Um, but it seems more just like it's just pure energy. Like,
seems to be the case. But yeah, I've got to say, I just love the name of his attack, Ferocious Hulk. It just
Ferocious Hulk, yeah.
Ferocious Hulk, and we need to do it. Hulk smash! I had to do that. I had to do
Yeah.
that. But yeah, so we have Hisha being surprised. Yoshihima, that was her name. That was her name. I was trying to think, like, what is that spider Mononoke's name again? Yoshihima. So
Oh yeah. Also, I just realized because I'm reading the Viz comments while we're talking. Yuji, like he got his shoe stuck in that web, right? And I just figured, okay, yeah, he just probably cut it up and jumped out. But what actually happened was he got out of his boots because if you look on page 12, he's barefoot.
yeah, oh my word, Yuji.
Yeah, and same continues on with page 14. So yeah, that's a nice attention to detail. Actually, didn't
Yeah,
even realize that. So
I
thank
didn't even
you,
realize that until now.
Cigar Gorilla, for pointing that out on Viz.
Yeah, thanks for that. So yeah, as we stated, it's revealed that the swords draw out Mononoke's no, the samurai officers draw out Mononoke's powers with the sword and imbued with Mononoke's spiritual energy, and they its uses up a lot of spiritual energy, but it's certainly a threat. And we soon see why it can be a threat, as we have Yuji talking to himself by saying that the human-shaped Mononoke may look like them, but they are completely different on the inside. When another Mononoke gets killed, they laugh about it, but when humans get killed, there's nothing funny about that, and it makes him furious. And we see like just this like change in his personality completely, like just this undying rage inside of him, which pretty much which could be like what was happening in the last chapter with Dora and Kusanagi at the end of the last chapter. That Kusanagi was just giving off so much energy towards Dora that it was just bringing out more of his pure, undying rage.
Could be, because I was also thinking this chapter. We know that Dora and Kusanagi, using combining human and Mononoke power, are able to achieve these results. And in a way, Yuji's doing the same thing. And I guess since the supernatural blade is something all officers can do, means that all samurai officers basically do that, and that's probably why they're so strong.
Yeah, yeah. So going back to the chapter itself, we have Yuji getting so furious that he goes blissfully at high speed, and we see him able to just cut Hidehisha in half. Now, this was the moment that I was like, okay, I'm not sure how Party Jams is gonna take this Hidenasha getting killed like this.
Yeah, and okay, I thought it might have been this, but I wasn't sure. And yeah, I was thinking about this when I was reading this chapter and before we were doing this stream. And here's kind of my thought. So I think the reason you'd probably think I'd be concerned, and I was, is the fact that we saw Yuji and Hidehisha, like them fighting in the beginning. They kind of served as our power ceiling after Yuji took down the Mononoke who killed his mom. And now we're seeing that same fight between who were supposed to be equals, extremely one sided to the point where Yuji just one shotted him. But I think when I thought about that, back to that fight, I think I remembered Yuji himself specifically saying, like, before he got there, he came back from a mission. So I think he was honestly fighting Hidehisha while he was exhausted. I
Yeah,
think this Yuji at that point was like much weaker, but I also will agree the way it's kind of portrayed is a little concerning just because if people couldn't put that one together, it almost seems like Yuji got a weird power up out of nowhere.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't say it was a weird power up because it has been established that Yuji has had this power since his introduction. But yeah, I can see why people would see it as a weird power up. But another thing that I was concerned about, it would be like if in Bleach, like we're just going back to the Bleach reference, if Ichigo versus Grimmjow first fight, Grimmjow was sort of like on equal footing with him, and then in the next fight, it was just their final fight, the one in Karakotan, and Ichigo just one shotted him.
Yeah. And I think
Well, sorry, I was just going to say, not even Ichigo, if it was someone like Renji just one-shotted Grimmjow. There we go, that's a better analogy.
I guess, but I mean, with the case of Yuji, it's almost like more like a captain or something because Yuji is already designed to be as one of the strongest officers.
Okay.
And I think that's one of the reasons I can kind of go with this because, in a way, I think this chapter, what it's doing, provided this isn't going down the direction of getting axed, is it could just be setting up this is how strong an officer is. Because we saw how strong like Tenemon was based on how easily he was able to kill mine, how easy it was to handle those samurai from the other team. And then Yuji's out here taking out people supposedly of the same strength level without much effort. And like the same Tenemon that took both Dora and Toda combined. So I think this is in a way almost setting up the power scale of how strong our characters are. But I could understand why people would potentially be concerned about it. We should probably also read some of the comments because we have some comments coming in.
Yeah.
So first,
So
Ann Arbor, nice to see you.
yeah, nice to see you, Ann Arbor. Rex, nice to see you as always. Mina Seal, nice to see you as well. We've just started the stream, guys, so you're not too late. Thank you for all joining us. But yeah, Rex, Dora seems super fast paced this chapter. Do you think it will be axed? Depends.
That's kind of what we're talking about right now, Rex. And why I want to start with this series because a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Like this series could be getting axed if we're already taking out some of the potentially strongest characters. But I think the other thing is this is just who we thought would be the strongest characters. So it could be that from here on we see stronger people down the line, and we're going to need to get our characters up to pace. But the problem is, of course, that if this is the case, this means that samurai officers, this kind of presents a power creep issue where the samurai officers are significantly stronger, and Dora and Kusanagi, along with Toda, are significantly stronger than most of the standard samurai. This is kind of the issue Demon Slayer had like near the end of the story, but Duran's running into it immediately. So I am kind of concerned about that.
Yeah. Also Mina Seal. Yeah, we'll talk about that after we wrap up the chats. We'll comment on your comment in a second because we're near the end of the chapter. So we have Hidehisha being killed, and as the other Mononoke is getting ready to do an attack, Yuji just sliced their arm off like it was nothing, and they conclude, oh, like he's too fast, incredible. Both his supernatural powers and athletic abilities are exponentially stronger than any I've encountered before, and and they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad I got to meet you. I get to take our powerful samurai." And he reveals like, "Oh, we didn't just lure you here to gang up on you. It was all energized from the start for the purposes of this attack, which is revealed to be Dark Hades Blast." And yeah, that's where the chapter ends with just like this geyser of blackness coming down on Yuji.
Yeah,
So
and I'm usually not a huge fan of these kind of endings just because it's like there's no way Yuji's getting off screen like this. He's gonna be fine.
unless he does
And
get off screened.
nah, they wouldn't do that, right? Also, Mincel, sorry for saying your name wrong.
Oh, Tinsel.
No, I think it's pronounced Mincel, and he's just saying using Tinsel as kind of like a rhyming comparison,
Okay, all
phonetic
right,
comparison. That's the word.
all right.
And
Mid-cell. Sorry.
I also want to address Ann Arbor. I kind of agree with you if you didn't hear what I said earlier. That yeah, I think Yuji's attack is like an artificial version of what Dora is doing. I think that's why they're within the same league, so to speak, of power right now. Although of course Yuji's definitely stronger.
Yeah. So Mincel, I feel like Earthchild, Doron, and Shikamaru will be asked. Yeah, I can see if I was gonna if I was gonna be a betting man, Shikamaru will probably be the first to be axed, then Earthchild, and then if Doron doesn't pick up more, I feel like that could potentially be axed, or maybe Ayashimon could be axed at some point.
Yeah, and the thing that's kind of protecting Shigamaru to some extent is the fact that it's a gag series, and for some reason the magazine hangs on to those. But otherwise, it really should be the first one to go. And after that, the weird thing is, like, I could see Urchild, of course, being axed, but it's just usually they axe longer series before the newer one. So I feel like Duran Duran Ayashimon will be in a bit more of a danger zone before Urchild.
Yeah.
But I think the good news is of all this, Akane will be safe.
Yes, which I am just so happy about. Like, uh, guys, just say if you have not read Akane, and I know Ann Arbor wasn't a big fan of it, but personally for me, it is the best out of the bunch that we've got so far of the new breed.
Yeah, and that's counting like all these series we just mentioned, plus even I would argue P6. Uh,
Yeah,
as someone
um,
who's like reading like all that, and
as long as
yep, Drex, I understand that you dropped it, and I can kind of see why you would think it's going downhill, but of course I will disagree. I think this is just a good way to kind of set up our characters' strengths for now. It just kind of puts the series at a bit of a risk for the future. So I'm pretty
yeah,
excited what's happening, but um, I can see why you might want to have dropped it. And then Ann Arbor said, with this chapter, I have to say Kaiju 8 is now really the better version of this manga. Let's see. I mean, in terms of overall quality, I can agree with you on that because I think Kaiju number 8 has more action and art opposed to it. But character wise, I think it really isn't all that impressive till much later in the story, which it had more chapters to do that. I think with Kaiju number 8, it just took a while to really get itself settled in terms of characters, which should have done sooner. But I don't know. I feel like the difference is like Kaiju number 8 is a slightly different story with its like monster fights, if only because this is more akin to a very traditional shonen story about um, demon hunting, while Kaiju number 8's like kaiju fights. I don't know. I'm having trouble explaining this, but I think I kind of see it differently. But I can see why you would think Kaiju number 8 it would be the better version. But it also took a while to get there, I would argue.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm not really the biggest fan of Kaiju number 8. It just doesn't appeal to me, so that's my
Oh,
hot
I didn't know
take
you
on
read
it.
it. Huh.
I didn't. I kind of like tried to give it a chance, but I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah, that's understandable. It did take me a while to get into it. I feel like it's definitely gonna be better as an anime than a manga, to be honest.
Oh yeah,
Well,
for sure,
provided it
for
gets a
sure.
good
It's the same
person
thing
feedback.
of why like Ann Arbor said, as long as P6 stays, I'm happy. P6 I feel will stay because it
Oh yeah,
seems to
like
be
the
like
second
picking up.
volume did amazing comparatively.
Yeah, yeah, it seems to be sticking around, and I feel like that would work better as an anime as well, just for the fact that you can actually hear the music then that's being played.
Hmm. And Minsel, yeah, Ayashiman is above Duran Duran in terms of TLC, but not honestly by that much. That's the only reason we're kind of worried about that. And plus, well, I have some thoughts with this week's chapter as well that make me a little more concerned about that series
Yeah,
than
so
honestly I am about Duran Duran.
yeah, so I feel like we'll Ann Arbor. I wouldn't like to compare Kaiju number 8 and this in arts. One has they more time to draw the panels and doesn't.
This is very true. So I guess that is fair. But I think it's also a point of comparison, all the same. But I feel like even story wise, I think that also is kind of what hurts Kaiju number 8 because it takes longer for chapters to go out, which is fine. But it story wise is still very slow for what it is, while Duran Duran is pretty quick even for a weekly series. At
Yeah,
least for my own taste, I think that's what makes this series more exciting to me. While Kaiju number 8, of course, has much more potential for a long run series because it's building itself up for much bigger
yeah.
things down the line.
So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on Duran Duran. If you have anything else you want to add to the table,
Yeah, one more thing I want to say.
okay.
Prediction. So obviously Yuji's going to survive this, but also in addition to that, I want to say that since we basically fodderized these tie level Mononoke, I think what the next thing I want to do is find out more about the last Mononoke that has been obliterated. Because interestingly, if you pay attention to like the way he's behaving, like Yuji was very ticked off that Hidehishi was laughing at the death of one of his comrades, but Kanbei, I believe his name is, he
Yeah,
wasn't laughing at all. In fact, he was just concerned and calculated the entire time. So I think there's more to him specifically as a character, and I want that explored because I feel like he's the one who organized all this. I think he will shed some light on why the Mononoke are organizing like this, which is going to be important for the series going forward. Because right now, as it stands, if they just take out this Mononoke and then they're just going to leave the mystery, it'll be a while before the story actually really gets started. But we see earlier in this chapter, Yuji says on page 4, I definitely remember that snaky guy, but I'm not very good with faces. So Yuji recognizes him. My gut is to say that this guy may have potentially been human before. I'm wondering if he was.
yeah, yeah. That's kind of like a theory that I've had for a while. Like the Mononoke might be human, and like the world might be the human world that got kind of like that turned into the Mononoke world, or vice versa. Like the Mononoke world was like the world they're in now is the Mononoke world that's just been taken over by the humans, or something like that.
Yeah, there's definitely something here, and I want that explored next chapter. So yeah, I just kind of want to bring that up before we finish. And
Okay.
Ann Arbor also says, I think power scaling is worse in Duran Duran than Kaiju number 8. And yes, I'm going to compare them a lot. And yeah, that's fine. You can compare whatever series you want to compare. Yeah, I don't particularly for those two. But yeah, I will agree. Power scaling, this series is kind of like rapidly going to the point where, like I said, Demon Slayer was at, where only the Hashira are relevant powers, or in Dragon Ball Z terms, where only the Saiyans were anywhat relevant in terms of fights. And Kaiju number 8 definitely has more characters that are capable of fighting. So in that particular sense, I will agree with you. I just am not as invested in those characters personally, minus a few of them, just because I feel like the story likes to spend more time on its action, and which is fine. But I was just not emotionally invested in the characters the way this series made me invest in Kusanagi and Dora, and even Toda and Jinchio.
I was
You to an extent too.
I
But like
was
that story, the main sorry, just I
it's
want
all
to
right.
yeah, but that story it gave me like a little bit into the main character where I'm like, okay, I kind of agree with his dream, even though I'm not sure if I like the way he's going about it. And they just got back to another character they brought back in the beginning to emotionally invest me in him. So that series a little more all over the place with its characters, in my personal opinion. But there are still like a handful that work. But the cast as a whole, kind of weak, if you ask me.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, and since you brought up Jinchio, I've just got to ask one question. Where is Jinchio?
Yeah, Jin Chio. I'm still waiting for her. Here's my prediction for her. I After reading this chapter, I feel like she's just gonna come back and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm a samurai officer now. I just did that off screen, and I can use that supernatural blade technique." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. I guess that's a thing."
Yeah.
Because
Um,
you have to like power skill her back to be able to join up on these fights now.
yeah. Also, another. I have to
I'm
agree. The
glad you agree
characters are
with me there.
okay. That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I think
So
we both agree. It's just that we have different particular tastes. And like I said, I do think Kaiju number 8 will ultimately be the better series going forward. Like it's going to grow up and develop into something amazing. But I think much like Attack on Titan, because that was the big series it was constantly being compared to in the beginning, it's going to be a really big slow burn to get to that point, like years.
yeah, yeah, I agree. But I feel like if there is an anime of Kaiju number 8 coming, I feel like that would just shoot up more in
Yeah.
popularity in the same vein as Attack on Titan did.
Oh yeah, it definitely will. I mean, it's already selling incredibly well, but it'll definitely sell
Yeah,
insane
yeah.
once the anime
But
comes out.
speaking of animes, just a quick tangent here before I guess we'll move on to Ayashimon. Have you seen on my anime list where Spy X Family is ranked?
Not really. I haven't been watching it.
All right, it's apparently people are trying to make it on my anime list outrank Full Metal Alchemist, which on there is like the top anime.
Oh, they're trying to do what they did with. I see. Yeah,
Yeah,
they did.
trying to do what they did with interspecies reviewers.
Ah, man. You know what? Whatever.
Yeah, and all I'm just gonna say, just on a little bit of a tangent again with Spike's Family, for people who only watching the anime, has a strong start. I will give it that for Spike's Family, but don't expect the awesomeness of episode 1 to be maintained, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's probably going to be fine all the same.
Yeah,
Anybody else have in the chat want to suggest a series? Let us know. Otherwise, we'll just kind of go with the newer stuff like we usually do.
yeah. And like I said, since we talked about Ayashimon briefly, I feel like we should. I feel like we should just do that next. And Manga Alerts is here! Yay!
Hey, man, you just missed her on. That's about it.
Yeah,
And yeah, if you or anybody else wants to suggest something, let us know. And yeah, we could talk about. I mean, we did bring up actually both Ayashimon and even Kane, so technically we do either of those. And Minsel recommended Yozakura,
I
so
feel
we'll go
like
to Yozakura.
I feel like we can do Yozakura after Akane.
Okay, sure,
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah, yeah.
What do you want to
Um,
do then? Do you want to do Akane next, or do you want to do Ayashimon? What do
I
you want?
guess we should just do Ayashimon, seeing as how you said you had some concerns about the chapter itself.
Sure. Of course, I'm fine to talk about whatever the audience like wants because we don't have like Dr. Stone to serve as our usual
Yeah,
highlight.
yeah. So yeah, Ayashimon. So let me get up the chapter. So yeah, personally, I did enjoy this chapter, even though I do have some concerns myself.
Yeah, we'll talk about it because I wasn't as thrilled with this particular chapter. And of course, I'm coming from somebody who actually enjoys Ashimon in general. But chapter 19, until your chestnuts are out of the fire, bye bye. That's
Yeah,
extremely mouthful.
yeah, that is a mouthful. And it just reminds me of the Christmas song "Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire."
It could be, honestly, referencing that.
Yeah. So yeah, basically we start off the chapter with describing what dopo is, which is hitorima, if that's how you pronounce it, a yokai who can snuff the flames from candles and light and lanterns in the blink of an eye. Basically, a walking fire. So they're saying, yeah, there's no chance Maru is going to be able to lay a scratch on him because basically, how do you punch fire?
Yep, which is a valid question. And yeah, so then Iron Maru was like, "Yeah, there's not much we can do if I can't touch him." And so Ura's like, we need to strategize before the war starts out. And this is like we were saying before, giving me some more endgame vibes.
Yeah, yeah, because I was saying like if we get to the war right now, and since they're talking about taking down Dopo, I'm like, yeah, it's more than likely we're in the end game at this point.
Yep, which is too bad, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And yeah, going forward, then we kind of get to Central Park where there's several homeless men kind of gathered in like a little community, and it seems that it's one of the only communities where humans and yokai live and work together, which is interesting enough. And then they find this old man named Ozunu, and he's like, "Oh, hey, Koton, Oboro. It's been some time." It's like, "No, it hasn't, you old drunk. Oh, it hasn't? It hasn't been too long, you two." I will admit that comedy did get me to like him.
Yeah, I immediately love this character. I immediately love this character. Kind of reminded me of like a drunkard of like a I would say a drunken Kazuki from Dot Stone.
Yeah, I was going to say more of a haphazard Master Roshi type.
Okay,
But yeah,
well, I want to say Master Roshi because wasn't Master Roshi kind of the person who was a little bit on the risque side, if that makes
well, yeah,
sense.
I just kind of meant more like the old hermit keeps to himself kind of thing, who
All
acts
right,
as a
okay.
mentor figure. That's kind of what I was going for. But either way, yeah. So Ozunu acts as sort of a leader, I guess, for the community that they're in Central Park. And the weird part is, apparently, he is well over 1,000 years old, master of a bunch of magical stuff, and he's part human, part yokai. I don't know how that works.
Hmm.
Is he like a hybrid, like a child of a yokai and a human kind of thing?
I guess he is, which might give an explanation of to what Maru actually is as well.
Possibly. I did think that particular factor is interesting in this chapter because it adds a little bit of world building to the story, and possible
Yeah.
explanations for Maru. But anyway, going forward, is he then uh, Kotan asks Ozunu to look into the kid, and apparently, in exchange, he'll get 2,000 drinks. And I'm like, okay, yeah, he's definitely not human fully if he can handle 2,000 drinks.
Well, I guess it depends on how much alcohol is in the drinks.
Okay, that is true, but I mean, speaking medically, it's still a lot.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough.
But yeah, whatever, it's manga. Anyway, the next panel, what comes after that, is kind of where my concerns start coming in. So he takes a little thing to look at the inside of Maru and says, "You have an abnormal amount of prana, boy. As for your nadi and your chakra, the flow's not good, not good at all." And then I was thinking, no, they're tossing in a bunch of random terminology to just quickly insert the power system. And this is kind of where, one, I had some issues with the chapter, and two, where I felt like Maru the entire time and being very confused of what the crazy old man is talking about. But I do also want to say, as after reading some of the comments online, apparently all these words are from Sanskrit, which is
Oh,
from India, for those who don't know.
oh, okay, all
Yep.
right.
So effectively, they're just kind of talking about the power within people, as you would expect. And I guess they're saying this old man trained to become an immortal Senin, and I like how they use the word Senin, like Naruto, because like that's what I was getting from a lot of this stuff when they're talking about chakra and whatnot.
Yeah,
Um, and basically it's kind of the traditional, oh, you have a lot of power but you aren't channeling it correctly stuff. And they try to explain a bunch of metaphors, but effectively that's just what it comes down to. Maru is basically not using his power properly, so he can just punch really hard but not punch very well. That is
yeah,
like the whole gist of this. And
yeah,
Prana is like the power itself, chakra is the well springs of the power, and nadi is how it flows.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I wasn't sure if you had gone past the point yet, but yeah, the moments on the panels on page 4, that just made me like that just got a big laugh out of me when he says, "You boy are still untrained. You're a great pool, but you ain't got proper pipes or functions unbalanced." Yes, so basically comparing Maru to a swimming pool, and then Maru's like, "I don't hate swimming, I guess," and he's like, "Yeah, I hate baths too," and Kotan's like, "Water ain't my favorite either." And then Uru's just like, "Yeah, focus, everyone." And I was just like, Kotan, you're about as when it comes to water, you're about as useful as any devil fruit user.
Oh, that is actually true.
Yeah.
That's a good
Uh,
point. So yeah, anyway, so then Maru gets a bunch of needles stuck into him and then immediately said, okay, oh, what were you guys saying?
yeah, that all every time I see like the acupuncture with the needles, I'm just like, ugh, makes me cringe a little bit.
Oh yeah, I agree with that. I'm not very good with needles myself. I've talked to acupuncturists and like they've explained it to me, and I'm like, listen, I get what you're doing, and I'm sure it helps people, but I am not getting needles stuck inside me.
Especially on your face.
Yeah, especially on the face. The face is so just filled with everything important. Anyway, but enough of that. Basically, Mara's like, okay, this is gonna get me to power up, and then Uzo's like, or Ozu is like, nope, no, and he's like, the acupuncture is just gonna dull your senses. And then Mara's like, why would you do that to me? And then he's like, basically, they want to stop his human senses to acclimate to yokai senses. And again, they use these Sanskrit terms, which I saved a lot of these on Reddit for reference, but they effectively doesn't really matter. But I was not a huge fan of like them just tossing in all this terminology. Some people were. I saw in the comments they really enjoyed the Sanskrit incorporation because it actually apparently makes sense. But for me, it was just like this feels like a lot of word dumping.
Yeah, and I was just like, it just kind of went over my head a little bit as well. But
Yeah, that was like kind of like a big issue with this particular chapter because I think you mentioned this before, but Ayashimon, it's like one of its biggest weaknesses is like one, it doesn't really take the time to explain stuff as well as it could, and two, it also kind of is super text heavy at points where it really shouldn't be, and I think this
yeah,
is one of those times.
yeah, I think this is definitely one of those times. But yeah, so we have the chestnuts being thrown into the fire, thrown into the fire, and the Yogi is like, "Oh, punch out the flame and pluck them back up." And Maru is like, "Oh, so put out the fire with the wind from my punch." And he's like, "No, hit the flame itself." And Maru's just probably thinking like, if One Punch Man was back, it was made during the olden times. You're probably thinking like, "Who does he think I am, Saitama or something?" Yeah, but then we have the old geezer saying, "Oh, um, the Ayashmon, their concepts fragments of human fears made manifest. So punch the flame, deny the concept of it to destroy it, and Maru just doesn't get it, just doesn't get it at all. We get the explanation from Uru of the physical human world and the immortal yokai world don't really touch. They only interact through the medium of clashes. In order to touch a yokai, in essence, a concept, one would need to reach the immaterial. So you start by dulling your senses, attached to the physical world, sight, smell, and so on. So I guess what they're saying here is like, in order to touch them, you basically have to become a ghost or something like that.
No, I think what they're saying is like so far Maru what he's been doing is punching them like their physical bodies, like the money itself, which is why they scatter and eventually come back thousands of years later or whatever. But now he's learning how to punch effectively metaphysical concepts, which is kind of weird, but it does kind of check out for the kind of story this is. like basically, instead of being able to punch like the money that Dopo's made out of, he's gonna soon be able to like punch the fire that he is born from, kind of thing.
Okay.
And I mean, I get that part of the story, but it also reminded me of something. I can't really remember what, but I remember some other story I read where they talked about like hitting metaphysical concepts. Maybe it was Persona. Not sure. Might have been
Hmm.
Persona.
If anybody knows what that is, just put it in the comments, please.
Yeah, because I could have sworn there's another series that did something similar. But anyway, basically, Maru's point is just going to have to like punch fire and get the chestnuts out. And then Koton's like, yeah, but you're also going to be training with us as well. So he's getting training both to punch metaphysical concepts and some strength training from the Todoroki gang.
Yeah, and of course we have to have the
Training
obligatory
montage.
training montage with that doesn't have "you're the best around" because Mo's not the best around at this moment in time.
Yeah, but I do like how he's like, yeah, I can run alongside motorcycles and push cars, but
Well,
punching fire is well beyond me,
yeah,
which is,
I
yeah.
was gonna say, until I looked at one of the other panels with him running alongside the motorcycles. I was gonna say, yeah, he's already running alongside them. They're sort of tied him to the motorcycle, and he's being
Oh, yeah,
forced
yeah. I was
to.
talking about the next page.
Yeah, yeah, I know. You were. Yeah, it was before I saw that page again. Before I really looked at it, but wait, I'm just look. Oh yeah, yeah. I was like wondering, is that the top of? Is that his head being um pushed off by that pebble? But no, it's by that chestnut. But no, it's actually just the top of his head at the bottom of page 9.
Yep. Apparently, we just did a 10-day time skip as we learned the next page. And as expected, he's not able to do it yet. And the old man isn't really helping.
Yeah,
He's just
yeah,
drinking through all those 2,000 drinks.
yeah. It's like Miss Miyagi. It's like you're not really helping me. You just want me to wash your car.
Yeah. Yep, pretty much that. And it's just that's how training arcs go. Interestingly, Uzu then says he has the foundation, but he sees no connection between his training and goal. Basically, that same like weird mentor talk that these mentor type characters have.
Yeah, he sees no connection between his training and his goal. Right? I'm get. I guessing that's referring to the fact that they want him to think of the flames as Dopo.
Yeah, effectively. And that's kind of what he does in the next page where he's running and he's thinking to himself about fighting Dopo again and how he kind of buried his frustration inside of manga and as he's always done since he was a child. And what's interesting is they kind of tie this also into the power system, saying reading manga to recover. Interesting. That's rejuvenating your, he, I don't know, all this chakra stuff you have. I have the pronunciations in case I needed them, but I'm just choosing not to read them. But basically, they're saying manga's mentally healing him as
Yeah,
going through this.
yeah. But this can, I guess, confirm like what I anticipate. Like, okay, he may not be scared of Dopo, but it's actually psychologically affected him that fight really badly.
Yeah, and I think that was something you were bringing up before. You're hoping that that would happen, and I was
Yeah,
wondering if that would even happen because he seemed too excited. But yeah, I guess you were right. It has like really shaken him up.
yeah. Because you figure that no matter who you are, if you had to defeat that badly, you'd be like, oh man, if I go up against him next time, what will happen?
Yeah, and I guess we did get that. So pretty good that we got that.
Yeah. So
Um,
then we have
so basically running, and he seems weirdly enough that Morrow understands what he needs to do. Apparently, with visualization, but he just hasn't been able to do it yet. And then he, and conveniently enough, sees a giant fire erupt in an apartment building.
yeah. I was
And
gonna
then Morrow's just like, huh, fire.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it kind of feels like he just walked in. He just walked into Spider-Man 2 during. I don't know if you saw the original Spider-Man 2.
Oh yeah, yeah, I saw the original movies. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, where he kind of where it had that apartment building on fire, and I was just thinking like, has Mo just walked into Spider-Man 2?
yeah, kind of. Hey, one smart. Glad you can join us for one of these.
Yeah. So yeah. Once more, you've just said I'm going to rewatch the stream tonight. He said that on Discord. So all right, if you're gonna rewatch it, thanks for rewatching it, man.
Yeah, I'll try to put on the timestamps, but I'm going to be honest. This time they might be a little later than usual because I have stuff to do.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
But
Um,
let's see. Going forward, let's see. Maru hears that there's a child still in the building, and he immediately rushes in, which I don't know. I kind of wish, in a way, since he doesn't feel too much like the hero type to me, if he just ran to the building before hearing about it. But still, just because I feel like Maru would be the kind of character to be like, I could use this.
yeah, yeah.
But instead,
Um,
they have him save a kid, basically. And I like how they just kind of like show the panels of him getting ready to punch, and then he just comes up to the Ozanu and says, "Hey, your chestnuts. 10 tries, 10 grabs. I've got it down pat." And
yeah,
he asks, "Well, what happened?" And he just basically, I guess, tells him. We find out the story of the boy who survived the fire unscathed, and they ask, "How did that guy save you?" And he's just like, "Huh." So he came in and he beat up the fire, and of course they kind of leave that to childish imagination. But like, nah, that's what happened.
yeah, that's what happened. And then we have the end of the chapter where we have um Onu saying like, oh well, do that thing. That one word that I'm not sure we can say on YouTube.
That's fine. He takes off his shirt basically, and he said, "You're basically your body's in perfect form now."
Yeah,
So yeah, that was our trading arc. And I guess
I
that's kind of my other thing with this chapter. It's like we just did a whole training arc in a chapter.
yeah, I guess so. I guess it's probably because the author was like, I don't really like training arcs, but I need to do a training arc, so we'll just leave it to one chapter.
I guess so. And I do like the fact that this series isn't going slow, but at the same time, this was the other aspect to this chapter that didn't make me super thrilled on it, just because it gives me the idea that the series kind of is racing to the end here because we have Mario
Yeah,
basically get his power up. He can now punch fire, the concept of fire, and now he's probably ready to go fight Dopo, I guess.
yeah, because
Although we
his
might fight those Undyne people first, as just to prove how stronger he is.
yeah, because here's the thing. After Dopo, who's left?
Yeah, at this point, we don't have anybody except the one other enemy I thought we might get later down the line are the police force that they brought up early on because
Yeah,
it seemed like the one force that even Dopo was like somewhat willing to acknowledge.
yeah.
But I
Unless
don't
they're
know.
working for Dopo secretly.
Maybe I kind of was hoping they'd be on equal terms or something, like the mafia and the police force, effectively. But
Eh,
we'll see. Right now, we just know that I guess next chapter we're probably going to go find the Beat Stars Club, and then they're
Yeah,
going to find out what happened to them, and we're going to fight the Undyne people. That's my prediction.
yeah, possibly. And then uh, that'll and then after that we get the because there was only four of them, wasn't there? Like four gangs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was that. There was like some kind of investment group, and some random loner we don't know about,
yeah.
and the
So
Todoroki. So
yeah,
yeah,
we've got the Todoroki alliance already. So I honestly could see them just like maybe one chapter recruiting these guys, the next chapter, if it is in the end game.
yeah. So I think that's it for Ashima, unless you had more.
Yeah, I had nothing else to say. Yeah. So I
Okay,
guess
so Let's
Get,
see. Again, if you guys have recommendations, let us know. Otherwise, we have. I guess you want to do Akane next.
yeah, I want to do a Connie next.
Okay, let's do Akane.
Uh, and I could honestly say, like her face on the when you open the shonen part, is that face is the stuff of nightmares sometimes.
Oh, yep, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
So
So
go ahead. You can get started. This.
okay, so we have Akane saying like, "Oh, the Makaru is over, so now she can begin her story, and she's going to put on a great show for the audience." And she starts her story, and I love the way this story was presented because it did make me laugh. Where she says, "Oh, hello, old fellow. I hear from someone nearby that you serve free sake here," and they're like, "Sake for free?" Oh, well, I've got some relatives who send me sack from where they live, but the customer there is to drink only in groups of three, sack for free. How do you confuse sack with free? That just made me laugh. Like just that play on words.
Yeah, which is interesting because that works really well in English. But it's like, was that the original Japanese? Because obviously Japanese words and English words are not the same. So it kind of made me wonder. It's like either the translator is that awesome that he managed to like make a thing work, or they just happened to be similar enough in Japanese, whatever that was going on, that the pun
I
worked. So
I
I
guess it
really
was.
couldn't tell you.
I guess it was so. I guess it was similar enough in Japanese that they could get away with that pun.
Yeah, probably that's the most likely cause.
Yeah.
But yep, um, continuing onward, basically we see Kyoji. I'm pretty sure I
Kyoji,
got
yeah,
his name
yeah,
right.
yeah. I think that was his name. Yeah, yeah. So
Basically said that even though she's telling the same story, it sounds different now. And then they kind of go into what the story is about, called praising children, as it's
yeah, yeah,
called.
praising children, where you have an elderly man hoping to mooch some free sark, but the old man teaches, but the old man teaches him how to compliment others, but yeah, Hachigo is not a very good listener, and he then attempts to compliment grown-ups and children in all the wrong ways, and it's a humorous story of misunderstandings. It's a Sensan Banashi, a brief and light story generally performed by the Sensei rank. So that was the rank above where Akane is now, isn't it?
Yeah, she's right now in the apprentice stage because she's still a minor. But
Yeah,
then, yeah, Zen says like right after that.
yeah. And I love this story about being like sort of like a parallel to what Akane went through, like how the in the previous chapters was like teaching her how to compliment others, but of course, and how everyone's just been telling her how to compliment her audience and understand her audience, but she was not a very good listener on that front and thought like, oh, it has to be my way or the highway, basically. So I like that neat parallel that the story is trying to give off with Akane.
Yeah, and she does explicitly say it too, which I guess was a nice way to spell it out for people who didn't pick up on that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then Hayes, in glad they got away with it. Dope chapter. I am assuming you're referring to Akane on that one, Hayes.
yeah. He probably is referring to the gag.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah. So then what's interesting is, and I did want to bring this up particularly for this chapter, because also it wasn't just me, but Shonen and Chillin. I know I bring those guys up a lot, but their stream is like right before ours, and I always watch it before we do ours just to see what people are saying about manga. And they had like a similar issue I had with this chapter, which, but then I think the difference between me and them is this issue I had, the series took it and then used it to slap me in the face with what they did next. So I kind of want to talk about that for a bit.
Yeah, go
Uh,
ahead.
yeah, so starting on page 4, when Kyoji was saying, Her slow and careful tempo seems right for this audience. Change your style to listen to something they're doing. I was thinking to myself, okay, well, this is something I wouldn't have realized if Kyoji hadn't said anything. And Ocean said similar thing, where this series and Act Age, in many ways, they kind of have to explain this stuff to us because we wouldn't be able to tell, especially the way the story is structured, where they always have to be like, yeah, many readers might not know what this story is, so we kind of have to take a second to explain what the story is about, and then go on to show them telling the story with these expressions. And as such, it's hard for us to keep track of the pacing of the story. So the fact the story needs Akane needs a lot of expositioning for itself, and I thought that's kind of a big weakness for this story, but it's also almost inevitable, so I can't blame it too much. But then we get on to the next page where she's basically just continuing on with the bit, um, where she goes on to just have this old man trying to lecture the younger man. It's like, okay, you have to adapt for each person. What if you're talking to a 50-year-old man? Tell him he looks 45 or 46. Oh, okay. Now, what if he's 60? Say he's 55 or 56. And if he's 70, say he's 65 or 66. And at this point in the next pages, they keep going with this bit, and everyone's laughing and cheering. Just the way the panels are getting smaller and thinner, it made me realize, oh, I see. And right before even Kyoji explains it in page 8, the tempo of her storytelling is picking up. Basically, Akane, as she keeps going and going with the story, the paneling and the way the sentence is structured kind of let us know that she's going faster and faster. And in this way, the story is illustrating the tempo thing that I was saying earlier. The story couldn't do a very good job explaining without exposition. But
Yeah,
it did.
it did.
And I'm like, all right, well played, Akane. Well played.
Yeah, and also as well, it's kind of like a metaphor of like the tempo like picking up. The more it's picking up, the more the audience is getting sucked in, and the panels are shrinking. Kind of like the story is getting the story is literally sucking you in right there.
Yeah, this was very well visual storytelling for the story's pacing. I mean, it still needed some exposition, of course, but I think the fact is the story can do it without exposition, but it also does include a little exposition just to make sure everyone's on the same pace. And in this
Yeah,
case, this is an important thing to explain because, as they said, she started slow, then gradually got faster like a car on the accelerator, but it's so natural they didn't realize. And she did this to get the audience accustomed to the pace you want to tell the story. And
yeah.
I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, and also as well with the exposition, what I feel like makes it work here as opposed to like something say Ayashimon is that with that exposition, it seems like they have to stop the story then in its tracks in order to like get the exposition out. But here, the story keeps moving as we're getting the exposition, if that makes sense. Like back
Yeah,
on
yeah, it does.
yeah, like back on page 5, you have like the exposition of like, oh, seems just right for this audience, changing your style to suit up, and then we have Akane doing the story whilst the exposition is on the side as well.
Yep. And I think it might slow it down maybe a tad bit, but not too much. And especially, I think, in because Akane herself, like the story says, likes to tell fast paced stories. So even if the story is slowed down a little with exposition, it almost doesn't matter too much because her exposition heightens the storytelling itself.
Yeah. So then we have Akane saying like, "Oh, this is going great now. I can do it my way." I think it's really important to meet the audience where they're comfortable. But and then we get a flashback to when she was working at the bar, where the owner is saying like, "Oh, you make your own where Akane is basically praising the owner of like, "Oh, you make your own mayonnaise here. You're so dedicated." And he mentions like delighting the audience, that delighting the customers is the entire point. As long as I do it, it's all about presenting the food I can be proud of. And she's kind of taking that lesson on board herself and kind of applying it to her performance because they say um, as Koricho as Kojio states, oh, before she was like a fireball pitcher who couldn't hit the strike, using the baseball metaphor again, but this time she made the adjustments necessary to get it into a strike zone that people could enjoy, and she's kept her speed and chose to widen the strike zone instead. So not necessarily being like, I guess, one on one between a batter, but like bringing the whole, for lack of a better word, baseball field into the frame and making it more about that.
Yeah, I think that's as close as you can get that metaphor. And yeah, it's definitely impressive what Akane did. Though I will say one thing with all these, even this chapter and the last one showing what she learned from the restaurant, I do admit that the whole like flashing back as we do in the next page feels a little excessive. I think they do a little too much flashbacks. Like, oh, she learned this back then, and it's like, okay, but we didn't happen to see that ourselves. So it just kind of feels like you're just bringing in some extra stuff.
Okay, yeah, I can at least agree with that. Yeah, the flashbacks are a little bit like, did we really need this?
Yeah, and I don't think flashbacks in general are bad, but I have read stories where they were a bit excessive and it took away from the story. Because if you have a story with too many flashbacks, at some point you're just telling a story non chronologically, just uh, out of nowhere, and that's kind of hurts the storytelling itself. It's not gotten to that point yet with Akane, but I am kind of a little worried about it just in this particular arc.
Oh yeah, I can definitely agree with that, but hopefully they'll learn from that and maybe take a step back in the future.
Well,
But
we'll
yeah,
see.
speaking
Then
of
if
it,
we get, oh, yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead. So then Shigemaru, he's basically saying, "Oh, Akane will do fine at that restaurant." And he said, "If you don't mind me saying, she seemed to be struggling with it." And she's like, "Yeah, I think with Akane is she's good at keeping others in mind and she's willing to learn, but she might be panicking a little due to the influence of other pupils. But I'm not worried." And Kyoji's like, "Yeah, you're right. She has her eye trained on the right audience." And then we see Akane's perspective where she's like, "Oh man, I'm so glad everyone's thrilled with my performance." And yeah, we get to see a nice contrast between her two audiences, one who was amused by her performance to one that's just like with her and laughing at all her jokes. So it's actually a nice way to subtly show that her growth. Um, and going onwards, she basically just says the thing you've been saying, Luke, that this story particularly is relevant to her. And yeah, I think maybe I understand the story needs to exposition a little bit to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. But I also think that's something they could maybe reel back on a little, just to be like, yeah, as the audience, as the readers. I had a writing teacher once tell me, we don't write for idiots. Trust your audience to be able to pick up on stuff. And I think that they could probably do that. Just like trust, like explain all the Rakugo stuff because we're stupid on that. But you don't necessarily explain like too much on. It's like, oh, this is a story parallel to what's happening with Akane and what she's performing. Because like P6, it also has like the music they play is parallels with what's going on with the characters and their mental states. And they do kind of address, point it out, but they don't really dig into it much because they kind of expect people to pick up on it. Now, I think P6 maybe does that a little too much, but I think Akane is almost in the opposite extreme. So both of these rookie mangakas have kind of different errors to be made, but I feel like Akane is definitely the stronger of the two series from what I'm reading personally. And then we
Okay,
get another flashback while
yeah,
he's doing
yeah.
it.
Three flashbacks in the same chapter. So yeah, okay, this was a little bit too extreme. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, it's like something you wouldn't notice while you're reading, but it's one of those things when you review it, you can kind of start seeing it. Because, like you were saying, the flow of the story is kind of broken up a little, which is normally not a problem in Akane, but here it's slightly more broken than it usually is. So
Yeah.
then, but I will say this flashback, a lot of people really enjoyed the lesson here because Shigemaru basically tells her when she was a kid, the Rakugo is an art form developed by townsfolk. And that's why all the protagonists are carpenters, fishmongers, landlords, everyday people just like us. So you'll learn about these people through these stories. She's like, I don't know. They're from so long ago. And he's like, don't worry. You'll understand. Our lives may have changed, but there's a beating of beating heart of humanity that stays in any era of history. So go out there, experience things, struggle, get hurt, and one day these things will help you grow. And I actually kind of like that because, in a weird way, that's something I didn't realize with the story of Rakugo, but it makes sense that all of these stories, they're very simple stories. Like the characters are all like everyday townspeople. Like they're not like our modern day stories with superhumans and like the cream of the crop of humanity doing amazing things. These are just everyday folk telling about their everyday lives.
Yeah,
So it's actually kind of interesting in that aspect. This for Rakugo, and I like
yeah,
that. Do like that.
yeah. Really, really interesting like that, and also as well, like um, it as well, like because the normal townsfolk, it will be making it easier for Akane to understand their feelings and what they're going through. Whereas with like if it was say a superhero, she wouldn't be able to understand like someone who has lasers for eyes. But like with
Yeah,
someone like a carpenter who's just going about his everyday life, that's something she could really kind of get into. She could basically go to a carpenter and be like, "Hey, hey, so what's your day to day life like?" Or a fishmonger like, "So what do you do? What do you do? What's the worst thing about this job?" And apply it to a Rakugo. So I like that as well.
yeah, and that's very similar to what Act Age did too, where the characters kind of went out to learn about their performances, and P6 has done that like once or twice to kind of like learn about their musical pieces and performance. It just so I think future arcs might do something like you said,
Yeah,
where they'll have the characters visit places and people that are relevant to the stories they're going to perform.
maybe have like I'd say a Carney's apprentice when she gets there be someone who's just like I don't get it at all until she actually like really doesn't get it even when she goes out even when she or he goes out in there and it's just basically like okay you got to learn about a fishmonger. It's like why do I have to learn about fishmonger of all things?
And interestingly, at least for us non-Japanese people, it'll be kind of interesting to see like the everyday lives of Japanese folk
Yeah.
through these stories.
Yeah, so we get Akane realizing what Shugamo actually meant and the experiences that she's gone through, referring back to when she was working. I've brought her to the moment, and it was not a waste of time, and every bit of it can be applied to Rakugo. And she admits that Rakugo is so much fun, probably even more fun than she actually realized when she was little. Like she always liked it, but now she's probably like how Moe in Witch Watchers, she's like a Rakugo otaku.
Yep.
Yeah. And then we have Kyoji saying like, "Oh, I hardly recognized you up there. You threw me for a loop. Keep improving, and then you'll have nothing to worry about." But and Akane thanks him, and she's beginning to learn how to love Rakugo even a little bit more than before. And Koji's like, "Oh, well, I'm not sure what any of that means, but." If I've helped you, I'm glad you've shown me your answer loud and clear. Now it's time. Now it's my turn to show off and demonstrate the power of seniority to you. Yeah. So, what is it? What is his story going to be about?
Yeah, and I'm hoping this is just like another learn a new trick from Kyoji, and like that's what I predicted it'll be. But a weirdly interesting take, which I don't think the story will do, but I thought about, is that what if in the next chapter after Kyoji seeing Akane doing all these awesome things, and he's like, "Ha, okay, let me show you how a senior Rakugo does it." And Akane's getting all hyped to see it. He actually messes up during his performance.
Ah, I didn't even
It's
think
like,
about. Yeah, I
yeah,
didn't
because
even
I
think
don't
about
think
that.
it'll happen, but it would be kind of interesting if they went that route. Just because one, I mean, Akane is of course the main character, so her growth and her learning from her senpai are kind of what's important right now. But I also like it when like the side cast also develops, and I think these characters, especially Kyoji in particular, will be like major characters going forward. and I would like to see their growth because they're not. I think they just reached the second level of
Yeah,
Rakugo.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
think they did.
right after Zenza, whatever that was, they haven't reached the highest heights yet. But I think if we're going to follow their route a little bit as well, their character journeys, then seeing them like struggle as well would be kind of nice. That might not be till later. That this might be too soon for that, but it could be that we see some mess up here, some loss of confidence, and then maybe he'll feel like, oh man, I can't train someone if I'm not at my own up to level yet, and then someone else will, one of the other senpai will then take up the next arc because he's feeling so dejected.
Yeah, or
Just
yeah. Well, Fine doesn't actually like that idea. Because Fine's
uh,
just commented, I don't think
oh,
I'd like him messing up,
okay,
to be
fine.
honest.
I was just talking with Fine on Discourse. I was like, wait, you're saying this? But
All
yeah,
right.
and I can agree, Fine. It might be too soon for him to do it, and we don't need Akane getting too much of an ego boost. Although I don't think she would take it that way.
Mm.
Um,
Here's
but
it.
it's just a thought I had while I was reading the chapter, just for if we want to follow his character arc. But I do understand wanting to see because we haven't seen Kyoji properly perform, so it might be good to have him perform expertly the first time at
Yeah.
least. So I get it.
Or
I do.
he- here's something that they could potentially do, um, which, uh, which might be okay, is that he gets up on stage and does his performance, and nobody likes it. Like absolutely nobody there likes it, and they're just encoring for Akane.
Ooh, that would be rough. But I thought you were going to go the direction of maybe he'll do it. He'll do it well, but it just won't be the same level of response.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. Like he'll do it well, and yeah, he just won't get the same response, and they'll just be like, "We want a carne. We want a carne."
Well, we'll see because, like as Fine said, it might be too soon, and I don't
Yeah,
disagree with
but
that
I
line of
don't. thi-
thinking. Fine.
I don't think it like you're saying he would mess up. Like I don't think he would mess up. I just think the audience wouldn't like his story. Like he picks the story that is incredibly, it blows them all away, but for some reason they just can't get into it. It kind of like how you could have, like, say, the best manga, everybody adores it, but there's just like that one person who's just like, I don't get it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I see. I kind of see what you're saying.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
anyway, those are kind of our thoughts for Akane.
yeah,
And I think either way, though, after this performance, we will see another senpai take over for the next arc. And I think these are good pace for these arcs. Like they're short, they take their time, but they also don't feel like they overstay their welcome. So I think this is a good pace for the series right now. And
yeah,
yeah,
I
right.
agree.
I agree. Fine. Execution is like important for everything because you could have the dumbest idea concept ever, but then someone pulls it off. Like I think with My Hero, like I always thought the Dobby reveal was gonna suck because it's everybody saw the reveal coming, but Horikoshi pulled it off very expertly. So
Yeah, and
uh,
speaking of My Hero, there was a reason why I had My Hero be the thumbnail of this stream, because honestly, I did enjoy the My Hero chapter this week.
interesting. I have some thoughts on that one too. I thought it was okay overall. But let's see. But the guy did want to teach that thing to Akane, so I don't think he's going to. Right. Yeah. Agreed. That does make sense. Explains if he had a specific lesson to teach, this would be the time to do that. And I
Oh,
think that's the
okay.
most logical course from a narrative perspective. I don't know. I sometimes like it when stories surprise me with the direction they take. So sometimes I like to imagine that they'll do something different. Like for example, with Earthchild, for example, it's like, okay, so this is the thing that I thought you guys were going to do. It was a little different than I was expecting, but sure, it just took you a while to do it. But
Yeah,
that kind of sounds weird, like out of context, but trust me, it makes sense with context. So I think Mincel, if you're still here, I think we were planning on doing Yozakura after Akane. Fine, if you had any, since you're also here, if you had any manga suggestions.
yeah.
First, because so
I
far
know.
we only did Duran Duran, Ayashima, and Akane.
Yeah, and also anybody who's here, like, cause we've got a few people watching, so anybody that's here, like, if you just want to say what series now, the door is open.
Yep, because like we do talk about most of the series here, so you'll probably get to hear. And if we aren't, if it is the one we're both reading, we can give you our quick thoughts
Yeah,
on smaller series
yeah.
because I know that does happen time to time. But if no one suggests anything, I think we could just do Yozakura like we thought, or Black Clover, because I also want to talk about Black Clover.
Uh,
That one's very weird to
I
me. Like,
think
not
yeah,
the chapter itself, but the response.
yeah. I think we should talk about Black Clover because I did the awful thing. I read the scans early for Black
Uh,
Clover. Curse me, curse me. But when I read them, I was like, yeah, this is probably going to be a bit divisive, based on what I'm seeing.
I don't understand how or why, but I was reading people's like responses, and I'm still confused, honestly.
Yeah,
But okay, but yeah, we can do Black Clover. I
I
guess.
think what it is just I feel like people are just like not seeing the bigger picture. They're just seeing it at like face value here. Um,
Well,
and
what I'm seeing is it seems like people are like that's what I thought this was going to be too, right? But I think for other people, it's more like they are looking at like the bigger picture of the arc and just feel like this, and just kind of felt like this wasn't a satisfying conclusion for them, which it was for me personally. So
yeah, I agree. It was a satisfying conclusion for me as well because but I feel like people are like, this is the big bad king of the devils, and he's been defeated already.
yeah, which I mean, that argument is easily countered by he's not nearly full strength, and he says as much literally in
Yeah,
this
he
chapter.
does. But I feel like people are just like, this manifestation. If this dies, then Lucifer dies. I think that's what people getting are seeing and getting mad about.
What I saw other people getting mad about is I've seen some people say that the villain motivations, like as a whole, aren't very good, which I would say, okay, sure, but that's kind of been a long running issue with Black Clover in general. So I don't
But
know why you thought that would be any different now.
question: what motivation does the king of the devils need? He's just evil. He's hellspawn. He doesn't need
Yeah.
a he doesn't need a motivation.
And yes, I'm glad you brought it up because that's the second counter argument. This is like some enemies I like villains with like complex motives, but you don't really need it for like demons because they are demons.
Yeah.
You can just make them evil. That's what they are.
Yeah. Um, but anyway, we should just talk about the chapter right now. So we have Lucifero ranting to himself by saying, "Oh, I'm the highest of supreme devils. I stand at the pinnacle." Basically, typical villain speech, and calling calling Asta and Lebe utterly magicless brats, and it can't possibly lose to them before the gravity magic finally affects. Like, it took them long enough, but Lucifer finally got there. He finally got to use the gravity magic on them.
Yeah, I mean he's I think been using it, but because every time we saw him going down, we I think thought it was like his magical pressure or something, but I think it was just gravity.
Yeah. Um, so Asta and Lebe are question like, oh, we did all of that and he's still not dead. Well, here's the thing, Asta. He's not even at full strength here, so he might come back eventually. And then we have Lebe saying, I can't cloak us in enough anti magic to cancel out the gravity." And again, typical Lucifer going on the first speech, "How dare you look down on me even for a moment?" Which I like that. Like, just the ego. He's got such a big ego that he'll use enough of his force just to be on top of people. He doesn't like to be looked down on people, being the king of the devils.
Yep, and that's basically his whole shtick right here. And again, I think it just fits him and his character well enough. So I don't
Yeah.
know what the problem there is.
Yeah, and like I said, he spells it out right here. Half my power is still in the underworld. I'm not at full strength. If I were nothing like you, would never have done this. So he basically just spells it out for them. And then we have the other devil that I can't remember his name of, just sitting there,
Yeah,
still
we'll just
sitting
call him
there.
Adra because his full name's like Adra Melch. But yeah, Adra.
Jamal, just still sitting there, like do something already.
Well, we'll get to that near the end because I think that's where stuff gets interesting. But yeah, basically, he just goes on continuing his rant about them losing, about getting crushed, and blah blah blah. Eventually, Yami comes in with Knocked, and he's like, "What? You guys should be dead." And then, of course, there's the classic "Here and now will surpass our limits," and
Yeah,
again, that's
which,
exactly like Black.
go
What?
ahead. Go ahead.
I was
Quick.
gonna say this is classic Black Clover behavior. It's like, how did you guys do that? We just surpassed our limits. It's what we do.
Yeah. But this I was looking at Anime Lately's stream before we came on, and they were saying something like Black Clover could potentially end in 10 chapters.
Oh, I don't think that makes any sense.
Yeah, I don't like. If someone from Anime Lately comes in now, I just want you to clarify like what that was all about. They said something about it potentially ending in 10 chapters or something. Like if he really wanted it to end and not overstay its welcome, because I think
Yeah,
that
I don't think they could do that, honestly.
yeah, um, but yeah, Lucifer is right. They should be dead at this point. Like particularly Yami. It's like how much HP does he have? 1%.
Yeah, something like that. And
Yeah,
he's still like, but that's just how Black Clover is. So that didn't really bug me too much. And I thought that might have been the thing that was bothering people, but I don't think so. Because even then, like when Asta stands up, um, in the next page when he's like, the boy can't even stand, and he does. I was just like, yeah, because that's of course what Asta can do.
yeah, and Lucifer always it's just like, oh, what is this? What is this? What are you? And he's like, and I just wanted Asta to just be like, I'm the main character.
Funny enough, I feel like a lot of this will get somewhat explained once we learn more about his dad. We learn about his mom, but I
Yeah,
think something with his dad is going to come
yeah,
and explain some of this. But
that is that
that's
is it.
way down the line.
That is interesting. Like, who is Asta's dad? Like, I'm
Because someone had to, of course, be with Asta's mom,
yeah,
and that person had to also not perish while being with Asta's mom.
yeah. I'm like I
So that itself, like, should tell us something about Asta's dad being something extraordinary.
oh
Maybe
oh
giants. I'm thinking giants because it would
oh
be so ironic to have a short giant.
or
Huh?
Asta's dad was oh Asta's dad was a devil.
Hmm. I mean, that might explain why Lebe wasn't affected by Lichta's abilities, just because her abilities may not have much effect on devils in and of itself.
Yeah,
So that would be something.
yeah. It has to be someone. It can't. I don't like. Here's the thing. I don't see it being a human
Yeah,
because
I don't either.
like
At least
so
not a full human, I should
not a
say.
full human. So and this might explain why like again why Asta that might explain why Asta could merge with Lebe and be fine, but like maybe someone like Natch could only make contracts with devils or something like that.
Hmm. Could be. Very well
Hmm.
could be. I mean, I also attribute that a little to their genetics, or not genetics. That doesn't make sense. But yeah, you're right. It could be because of the demon thing. But we'll
Yeah,
see. Because, like I said, I have a feeling like Lucifero's "What Are You" thing isn't just like for dramatic effect. I think there is more to Asta that we'll learn later.
yeah,
But
yeah.
man, I love the paneling of the next page where we just see Asta's eye, him pick up the sword, and Lucifero just flinch. And Yami's like, "Oh man, this is hilarious. The king of the devils himself, and our kid has you spooked."
Yeah, and then we have Lucifer proclaiming that next time we meet, I swear I'll kill you. I'll use my full true power. And then Asta brings his sword down as is it Yami or Natch or saying this?
Which part?
There is
Uh,
no next time.
oh no, that's Yuno. That's
All right.
literally
Yeah,
Yuno.
they all have black hair. They all have black hair.
Okay. But yeah, anyway, so I like how the teleportation, Yuno's ability was a little hard to decipher in some of these in chapters when he's used his ability, but this one I think was very well like paneled because we see Yuno's crystal like literally before Lucifer's like next time I swear see Asta appear right before him, and then like immediately see cut off to the side right after that after the shocked expression. And
Yeah,
then, yep, Asta just going for that final strike. And I think why this chapter hit hard for me is because I was okay with the last chapter being the end with just Asta and Lebe's brotherhood, like finishing off this devil. But it just kind of like having like all the big players play a part in like the true final strike, I think was even more satisfying.
yeah.
That on page 12, my God, the art of Asta's final strike on Lucifero.
That is gorgeous. I will admit that is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where we get to like, is this over yet? Is this ever going to be over? Like, Tobias seems to be trolling us right now of like how long this is going on for, because you see everyone smiling like, oh, we won. Oh, we actually won. And then you have uh, a devil. Yeah, that's what I'm just, Estra just clapping his hands, saying, "Brilliant, victory is yours." But if you look at the actual work speech bubble, it seems like it's melting, almost like something is happening at this point.
Yep. And that's the thing. The next chapter, and also I don't understand why people are weirdly ticked off with this chapter. This fight might not even be over because Adra's out here like, yeah, I didn't do jack yet, and you're all worn out. So is he going to turn against them? Is he going to spare them? What's his plan from here? Because
I
that
fe-
leaves plenty of interest for me.
yeah, I feel like because I said that Lucifer might absorb him, or he might absorb. Oh, oh! You know what I was saying? You know what was saying all that time? He's the true Lucifero. Like that might actually be the case.
I mean,
Like,
the only issue I have with that is he keeps using a different name, like a
yeah,
very specific name.
but some people all like if you remember in Bleach when Yamamoto was fighting what he thought was Yuha, that where it was actually Roy Lloyd, he was still using the Yuha name, so that might make me think like, yeah, this guy is just because he's a devil, so he could potentially lie all he wants and say, yeah, my name is this guy, and they could have hoots and Lucifer could have been going along with the ploy all this time just to keep the ruse up.
Well, we'll see. And again, I think what I've read other people say, and I kind of want to talk about this, is like weirdly, one person on the Project Manga server was asking about this. Interestingly enough, said like they weren't too fan of the pacing, and I thought, oh, you probably mean the pacing's been too slow, considering it's been like the longest Black Clover fight ever. Which that I think I might have understood if people thought this was happening too long for a traditional Black Clover arc. But weirdly enough, they said it's like, nah, we could have extended this fight more. And I'm like, what more? This fight's been going on for several
Yeah,
chapters.
yeah. How long has this fight been going on for? That's the question.
Yeah, I think I counted before. I don't want to count again. But yeah, it's been going on for a while, so I kind of disagree with them on that. I didn't say as much on the server, but I kind of disagree with them on that. And the other thing is, again, people I think found all the villains in of themselves kind of underwhelming. But I think they all played their roles. I mean, I will admit the Triad wasn't super interesting, but I think Lucifero played the role I expected him to, so he doesn't
Yeah,
bother me particularly. So I'm still not sure what everyone's issue is. Like some people are saying, like, man, this arc was bad or this character sucked, and I'm like, we haven't even necessarily seen the last of him, and this arc it probably isn't even over yet.
Yeah, it probably isn't. Like again, but again, like uh, Ash Aster, however you pronounce his name. Yeah, something is off about him. Like again, I'm just debating is he like is he just like the true manifestation of Lucifer's power, and was this like uh, well, not the true manifestation, but is he a portion of the real Lucifer's power, and it was just split up when it came to the surface?
It could, honestly, and if that's the case, that would explain even more why he was able to be handled so easily. But
Yeah,
I mean, we
yeah.
don't know, and we'll see. And I think people, I still don't understand when people were talking about the Mickey Mouse thing. I think I saw that even in our Controlled Chaos Discord
Oh,
server.
right, yeah, that was from a parody account.
Okay, because like I think David was trying to explain it, and an Arbor tried to explain it. And I'm like, guys, I still don't get it. What does that have to do
Yeah,
with Kingdom Hearts?
yeah, it's because apparently apparently what it was that parody account of unofficial Shonen Jump was saying Black Clover is going on indefinite hiatus after this chapter because of something to do with Disney suing the author.
Yeah, I mean, I blocked that account because I really hate its misinformation on Twitter,
Yeah,
throwing me off like that. But I don't even get the joke. Like, why? I don't know. It might
yeah,
if it's just randomness, that's just fine. If everyone just, but I feel like it's the weird thing is like I've seen other people make a lot of weird random comparisons to Disney and Mickey Mouse with a lot of the big Shonen series, and I didn't understand where it was all coming from. Might be some internet thing I don't get.
yeah,
But
maybe.
that was Black Clover. We still have quite a few series to go. So again, if you guys have recommendations, let us know. I think there's a couple series we could talk about. I know Minso wanted us to talk about Yozakura, and in terms of series, I think I have some stuff to say about it, but not too much. So we could do that
Okay,
next.
we could, yeah, we could do that. We could do that one. Personally, I'm really interested about what the ending is going to imply.
Oh, for Yozakura.
Yeah, for Yozakura.
Yeah, I'm too. I mean, I say I don't have much to say, but that's mostly because I think it was a very straightforward chapter. It was still
Yeah,
like I think one of my favorites for the week, honestly.
yeah,
Might only be second to Sakamoto Days, which is just usually
yeah,
takes my chapter of the week most weeks
and
nowadays.
yeah, and I'm just gonna say, I found it hilarious when I looked when I did my last review of chapter 124, and I was like, oh, I'm probably not gonna have much to talk about, and then I wound up talking for like half an hour with like
Yeah,
10 minutes on just like this crazy theory of mine, which now that I think about it more, that would make a lot of sense. Like why Kai is the way he is. Like if this whole poisoning has happened before and it's just like seeped into the air of the Osakura family, like around
yeah, and again, it's
like
brought
around
up
the
here. Oh, the thing that
like around the mansion. Like yeah,
yeah, and it could be, and there is definitely some mention of Kai in this chapter, so we have a lot to talk about.
yeah,
I guess to start off with, though, really like this color page. I love
yeah,
the coloring specifically.
yeah. Love this color page. Like really a lot. So mission 125. I won't let you go.
Yeah. And so then we start off where we left off last time with Tayo and Koichiro facing off against each other. And of course, Tayo's like really surprised with the flower stuff. Luckily, Furuba like immediately explains to him what's been happening here and tells him to not touch Koichiro. Because like those flowers carry an infectious poison. I don't know, couldn't even neutralize it. That's why Koichiro's running away from us. And he's just like, Tyler's like, what poison? Okay, okay, just calm down. What did Kai tell me to do? Use the blooming of 1,000 flowers to save Koichiro effectively. And he's like, I like how he says, it's not like I just blindly accepted those words, but that's the only thing for me to do. And I'm like, isn't that the same thing though?
Yeah. I was just
It's like
like,
I didn't blindly trust this guy I just met, except I am doing exactly that. which I don't blame him for doing that in his position. But at the same time, I think just since you and I are both in this mindset of there's something suspicious about Kai, it
Yeah,
makes me go, especially reading these words, it makes me go, I don't know about this. Something
yeah,
seems.
yeah. And again, it would make so much sense as to like if it did turn out that the when the heads died and the Simone got turned into poison that seeps through the air, it would make so much sense for that to be a case of like Kai gets some through like his breathing or like in his mouth and is able to get blooming without actually having to have the blood inside it. Because technically, if it gets in his system, he's got the blood in him already, just in a different like alternative way.
Hmm. Well,
Because
well,
it does it because it does it says because it says something like the blooming has to be like from the head of the Yosakura family, and since Sabumi was a head of a Yosakura family, and that like poison is coming from the head of the Yosakura family, technically someone could get it without actually having to have the blood injected in them.
yeah, and that would check out, and it would also suggest like Kai. His allegiance might not be what we think it is, and that
Yeah,
was kind of what I was predicting with first character way back
yeah.
when for him to
Which
be a future antagonist.
like I said, begs the question: if that's how it's going to go, does Rin have the power of blooming then? Because
Uh,
she's been in the mansion as well, and if like the
wait, who's
poison,
Rin?
You know, the one that brought Eye to the mansion, the one with the eye
Oh,
patch.
oh, her.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think it would work for Kai. I feel like if we do with too many characters, it might lose its luster.
fair
So
enough.
I'm just gonna
Fair
say
enough.
no, just because it'd be a little much.
Okay, fair
But I
enough.
could definitely see it with Kai for sure.
Yeah.
But that's probably going to be later on anyway. Uh, so, because Tayo goes, I won't let you go, Kuichiro. That's the title drop right there.
Yeah. And then Courage was
And
like,
then,
"Oh, you think you could stop me? That'd be quite the sight." And he's preparing for an attack, but Fruitsborough is there to interrupt him by using her abilities to shake up the ground a bit. And Shion's like, "Oh, we'll back you up, Tayo. Go after him." And Tayo is trying to get to Karicho, but Karicho's using everything in his power to keep Tayo at a distance. And Fruits was like, "Oh, you really think you're going to escape, Karicho?" As I don't know what she was trying to do here, because it seemed like she was trying to build a wall to prevent him, but the wall kind of like lifts up away from him, so he could technically get past.
yeah, I think it was just to kind of stop his path momentarily before Shinzo came in with his tactic right after that. Or
Oh
actually,
no,
wait,
it's
no,
not
no, sorry, not Shinzo. It's Kengo
It's Kengo
disguised as
disguised as
Shinzo
Shinzo, and
using Nanano's. Okay, well, that's wow. Okay,
that's a
yeah, that was very
mouthful.
confusing now that I reread this. Okay, so it's Kengo disguised as Shinzo using Nanano's muscle relaxant
Yes.
in the form of a gas
That,
pump.
I've got to say, that is some slick teamwork.
Man.
And I
Yeah, I
love,
go ahead.
again, I was just going to say, on that panel where you have the meow, yeah, Nanano's face kind of looks like, uh, oh, oh, assassination classroom, or what was his name? What was the name of the the guy from Assassination Classroom?
You're gonna have to be more specific. Which one?
The main alien, like sort of like, what was his name?
Koro Sensei.
Koro Sensei. That was like, it looks like Koro Sensei.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then he apparently that didn't work because Koichiro just used his wires to make a shield. And then I like how he immediately said, "I'll teach you one last thing. This is how you keep someone in place." And then she's let Futaba like, "Oh, you really are a total idiot." And then he just like raises up giant earth walls
Yeah,
to
like a
crash
tidal
the larger
wave.
ocean. And the weird thing with this chapter is, like I said, I like this chapter. It's probably my second favorite for the week. But it's so funny to me that basically these spies, and I think someone brought this up. I don't know if it was on the Viz or on the Manga Plus app, but I did like what they said. Is like I sometimes forget these guys are spies, considering the kind of power they do. It's kind of like with Naruto. It's like I forget these guys are ninjas because their attacks are like world-ending super abilities. Like if you look at like Kengo or Shion, like their powers, like yeah, this makes sense for a spy, right? Like stealth operations. But the rest of them are like, I'm gonna move mountains, and in Choichiro's case, I'm gonna use wires to move mountains.
Yeah, yeah.
He hasn't even used his blooming yet either. I'm
No,
just saying,
and that's the thing. What would his blooming actually be?
man, I don't even know. But like, I really thought we'd get it this chapter or the next chapter, but I'm thinking after all this craziness, he's just not gonna.
He's gonna be like, he's probably gonna be like doing a nod to the audience, like, "Oh, you want to see my blooming? Too bad."
Yep. Anyway, so then the siblings kind of try to defend themselves from Koichiro's like landslide attack. And then Koichiro, or so I should say, Taiyo comes in with a sneak attack with his sword, but with, of course, just the hilt of the sword. And I do like how they explain that, because like usually in most series, when I'm like, I'm going to stop you without, like, if it's like I'm going to stop you without killing you, but I'm going to use my pointy blade to do so, I'm like, how exactly do you think that's going to work out? But at least in this case, it's like at least it was the hilt. He was just going to knock him out. So I'm glad this author actually went out of their way to explain this. Because usually I hate it when characters are like, I'm going to fight you non lethally with my giant pointy weapon.
Yeah, yeah,
So then Koichiro stops the blade, of course. And then I love the effect of his wires, like capturing Taiyo right here. It looks really cool. The art in this chapter, of course, goes hard, as Yozakura does.
yeah. As the Oscar very much does. Yeah,
Yep. And then I also, and keeping this in mind, he says, the very threads that defeated the family heads, they'll cut you if you move. And so this line here, it makes me think that Koichiro thinks the heads are defeated. I don't
no,
buy that just yet, but he thinks they're defeated. I think the author wants us to make us think that they are.
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, like I said in my review, um, he's made it very clear that Tsubumi is a tree, both figuratively and literally. So, as long as she's still alive and sprouting roots, I feel like all the heads will be reborn through her.
Wait, including the Kengo head that we took out last time?
Yeah, including the Kengo head, because like as long as the main tree is still spawning roots, it can always reproduce.
Interesting. I always thought that one was out, but yeah, well, definitely I need to understand how to defeat these thing heads, because if what you're saying is right, we have to take them all out at once, effectively.
Yeah.
Anyway, so then what's interesting is he says they'll cut you if you move, so keep that in mind. But then he says, however, that wasn't a bad attempt, even for you. Have you matured a little in your own ordinary way? Basically, this
So
is his way of trying to be encouraging when he says
ba-
you're past the stage of needing me to protect you.
yeah, so basically, the best compliment you could probably get from Karicho.
Yep. So, I mean, I get it. That's how you have to do this. And then Tayo's like protecting me. And then they go through a whole flashback of like the first time they met each other. And then Koicho's like, I'm your family now. I may want to kill you, but I'll never let you die at the cost
Yeah,
of my life.
yeah.
And
So
so
it's more.
then Tayo's like, yeah, he's been protecting me and the family this whole time.
Yeah, yeah. So I guess his line there is supposed to be like, "Oh, there are some times that I want to kill you, but I'll kill for you any day."
Yep, basically. And I mean, that is basically their dynamic.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, we're gonna fight all the time, but when it comes down to it, we'll protect each other.
Yep. Or in his case, I'll protect you. And then Tyler's taking the other way, saying, "This time I won't let." Again, he'll just the title drop. I won't let you go, Kuichiro.
Sure. And then we have Tayo touching Karicho. And does is it just me, or does it look like? I don't know if this is meant to be his glove, Tayo's glove here, because like, is it just me or is Tayo's hand becoming blacker?
Yeah, because that's what I was gonna pointing out like keeping in mind that the wires will cut him if he moves line, because I think that's actually what's happening. The wires are cutting him as he's moving. Like
Right.
he's actually bleeding. Those are
Yeah.
that's blood
Yeah.
coming off the page 19 last panel.
Yeah. And very much a face that you don't get from Creature on the last panel as well.
Yeah, he's very thrown off, and then Tayo touches him too. So then, I mean, this is the part where they realize that Tayo is basically impervious to this poisoning. And I guess what really matters here is I'm starting to go back on my idea that thinking that Koichiro is gonna die after this arc, because I was always thinking, okay, this is the part where he dies and he passes the torch and everything, but this chapter is making me think, no, they're gonna try to find some way to barely save his life or something. So I think
I
the author's making me go back and forth on it, but also
y-
I'm very frustrated at the same time.
yeah, I'm very frustrated as well because it's like if one character was to die in this series, it would that's like a main character. It will be Karicho.
Yep, exactly. So I don't know how to feel about this, but it was a good chapter all the same, and very excited to see this fight end. I think overall this chapter is very straightforward. It's just a continuation of the fight
Yeah,
more than
but
anything, but it was
uh,
still pretty cool.
yeah, but as well, one thing that we do need to know as well that has been frustrating me for such a long time, and I did bring this up in my review. It's like with this poisoning because of the way they talked about it in the last chapter, it's obvious that something like this has happened before. Because they knew about it. They're like, yeah, this poison, when it happens to us, when it happens to the heads, it will affect your siblings. I'm just like, what has happened to the brother, the the uncles, the great uncles, or the great uncles, basically the other heads of the family's siblings.
Yep. It's a good question, and I hope it gets answered because so far there hasn't been any signs it will be, but I hope it does.
Yeah, because there has to be like more than just like Mutsumi and her siblings. Because there has to be like, uh, oh, oh, oh,
I mean, you're right,
oh.
there does have to be, but we just
What
haven't seen it.
what we need to know as well is like, will Sabumi go after Mutsumi's grandmother?
Um,
Because she's one of the heads, Mutsumi's grandmother.
yeah, that is true.
So will she go? So will she go after her grandmother, and will her grandmother be poisoned?
It is a good question because they didn't actually bring her up that much, despite the fact that she's a valid target.
Oh.
So I don't know.
Yeah, and if I was Tayo in the situation, and I'd be asking the grandmother like, what about your siblings?
I mean, that's what we would do, but that's from outside the narrative.
Yeah,
Obviously, in the story, you would think that they just passed on or something, but
but
there's
no,
definitely more going on.
there is something going on. There is something going on here. Like, uh, again, I know it's maybe restricted to just the heads, but what if Sabumi can sprout roots, quote unquote, to produce like zombies of the other siblings that are from the previous generations of the Osakura family?
And yeah, that's what we were thinking before. It's just that we haven't seen them.
Yeah, yeah. So that's something we've got to actually keep in mind because that has to be brought up at some point.
I mean, you would think, but based on what the story is setting itself up, but I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah, I don't as well. But anyway, that's all I had to really say on Mission Sakura family.
Yep, it was a good chapter, but very simple in
Yeah,
nature. So let's see. What should we do next? I know you want to talk. My hero was a good one for you, so we could do
yeah,
that. Or which
yeah.
one?
Um, I, I'm I I'm not bothered. So it depends on what you want to do, like Witch Watch or My Hero.
Well, personally, I guess let's get my hero out of the way, just because I don't really have as much to say, so maybe I'd like to hear your thoughts on like what you like about
Okay, okay. Uh, Also, as well, before we get into it, what's your opinion on Vigilantes because it's supposed to be ending soon?
supposedly. Yeah, so I mean, number one, the fight, the big climactic fight of the series is finally over, and I did the math, and it's been almost an entire year since this fight has started.
So,
That is insane to me.
how many chapters is that?
The weird thing is the way it releases, it's actually not that much. It's like uh, 20 to 30-ish chapters, just because it releases at weird times, like bi-weekly to monthly. So it's like it's not like a whole 50 chapter arc. But the other thing is the series itself is like only 120 chapters. So even having like that many chapters is almost like a third of this, or not like a little under a third, maybe closer to a quarter of the series. It's just that final fight. Um,
All right.
and that is kind of insane and way too long. But I think Vigilante is like as a whole, it's a really good series. I like how it expands on the world of My Hero, and at its best, it's arguably even better at storytelling than the My Hero. The problem is, like, I think My Hero has higher heights as a whole, and two, I think that the series of the weaker arcs of Vigilantes are just like even weaker than most manga that you and I usually talk about. Because there's some arcs where they literally had just like an arc where they were just putting on a community thing, and I'm just like, it built up to something, but at the same time, the entire time I'm like, this is boring. I am very bored by this arc.
Oh
So
my.
a very mixed bag. I would still generally recommend it to people who are fans of My Hero, for sure. And I would say that I think not Koichiro, uh, Koichi. Koichi is honestly a much more interesting protagonist than Deku, and he, I think, is the kind of protagonist I would have liked for this series, My Hero. But I would also say that the story structure and pacing are a little all over the place with that series as well, because it was just meant to be a fun spin-off. And also the latest chapter, it's hilarious because I thought we were about to have some major like character deaths, and then at the last second it got undone, and I'm like, oh come on, you could have just given me that. Okay, fine, whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we'll talk about the chapter itself. 350, bound to a fiery fate. So picking up at the police station. So cut away from the fights for a while. We have the guerrilla police officer going to question the doctor, and he's like, "Oh, your lights on guard today, so it's pretty obvious. All to prepare for today. That's why we sort out twisted raw materials born into this world." As we cut back to the fight, where we see Darby, getting almost as if he's like in ecstasy of what's been happening, and we hear warp seed that could serve as his vessel. So, is this Darby saying this?
No, this is that scientist. I forgot what they bring up his name a little later.
The I'm just calling the Doctor
Ujiko. This is
Uchiko.
Ujiko talking.
Yeah. And then before we cut into a flashback, like how many like you can make a drinking game by the number of flashbacks this week.
I guess so, but to be fair, this one was a backstory chapter, so I'm okay with this one
Yeah,
in My Hero because it's
and
all backstory.
this is why I liked this chapter a lot, because from what we got from Dobby's initial flashback is that it didn't seem like from what we saw from Endeavor's perspective on what happened, it made me question like, okay, why would Darby be against his father when he was all for his father in the first place? Because we didn't really get the whole story, and now that we've got the whole story, and it seems like Darby was more like manipulated by the League of Villains, if that makes sense, to sort of like twist his mind and think like his father was this like it was this like evil doer, whereas what we saw, it seemed like Darby was all for being taught by his father in the first place.
Yeah, and I guess that's fair. This does clarify some stuff with Dobby, but at the same time, there were some aspects I wasn't super big on, but we'll get to it as we
We'll
get
get
to it.
to we'll get to it as we get to it. So yeah, we have because he says it right. It says it right here. Like he was like when his flames were burning him up the first time. It's like no, I don't want to die. I still haven't shown him anything. And it's kind of and again I was just thinking like, well, wait a second. If Endeavor this was really this abusive to Darby, we didn't actually see that. All we saw was Darby having what looked like a relatively normal upbringing with Endeavor, as normal as you could get. But as we'll see in the chapter, it's a little bit more sadistic than we realized. As we see someone, I assume it's All for One, approaching Darby's charred remains before we wake up with him looking completely normal at this point as Toya, the Toya that we knew, and he seems to be in a hospital bed, and he's like, "Oh, where am I? I'm alive." And people are like, "Oh, he's awake. Sleepyhead's awake. You've been asleep for 3 years," and I'm just like, "Wow, 3 years asleep."
Yeah, so apparently they just put him in a coma for 3 years, and that's kind of one of like the smaller issues. Just because it's like we're just gonna do the coma thing. Okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and we have this sunflower daffodil kind of person with the smiley face, which reminds me of those sons from Angry Video Game Nerd Video Game.
Yep, and this guy is super creepy and also very off-putting because he's
Yeah,
just having these kidnapped children here at his mercy.
yeah. While also having just this smiley face, just like from now on, you'll live here, everybody, your very own place under the sun. They're your new family. You'll come to love them as you sure do the sunrise. Yeah, it's just like I'd be peeing myself with fear of this guy. Yeah, but Darby is just like, oh, I've got to get home. I bet that dad was just too busy with work to come and see me right properly. Yeah, he must be really, really worried about me. Because at this point, Endeavor thinks Darby is dead, so of course he's not going to come and see him. Um, and uh, he says, "Oh, there was some awful things I did. I should apologize to mom and everyone, and dad still needs to see what I could do." So again, I like that we're getting sort of like Darby's perspective of like why he hates his dad, even though it seemed like he was on board with his dad's ideals to begin with.
Yep, good.
Yeah, so we get a voice. I assume this is the doctor saying this,
Oh, I thought it was
because
AFO, but
uh,
I
I,
think
I assume it's the doctor because he says restoring your burnt and broken body was a monumental task. Your missing pieces had to be replaced via regenerative tissue. So it seems like it. So it might be a combination of all for one, but also the doctor as well, because the doctor would be the kind of person to like restore Darby.
right, and I think we do confirm that in a bit. I just thought it was AFO just saying I had my men basically do that,
Oh,
but
okay.
either way. But you're right, it could have just be that one because we are seeing a lot from Ujiko,
Yeah,
whatever his name is, his perspective. So it could be that he's talking. You're right.
yeah. So we have them basically confirming that Dobby will never again be able to exhibit the power he once did. His organs were completely shredded, and his sense of ability and pain were all that. Basically, his body was destroyed, but they were able to repair his body in time. And in his mind now, like he concludes that he was a failure, but and sees himself as a failure to Endeavor, um, and they reassure him that even though his body was destroyed, he will never again exhibit the power he once did. He was able to at least restore the flames to the form they might be able to restore the flames to the former glory, and they give him all the name, join our family, and allow you to allow us to raise him. And he's just like, shut up. There is no way I'm getting trained by anyone else. So he's still in this mindset like Endeavor's the only one that could train him. Before we cut back to the doctor saying like, oh, he had already been too modeled by his upbringing, blah blah blah, by his upbringing to be led astray, and talking about how the kids were their spares. So if anything happened to Tomoe Shigaraki, they could basically. So this this I was like, wow, this is complete. This is so dark that I can't believe. I can believe, but at the same time, I can't believe. Basically saying like, basically calling Tomoe Shigaraki just like a a vessel. So okay, he's done with. We can just use Darby as like the spare.
But what's interesting, and I guess this is I can kind of talk about some of my issues here,
Yeah,
is that like, well, one, there was like the coma thing, but that's whatever. That's just for time correction. The other stuff is that Dobby, I do like the kind of fact that he was too wild to be controlled even by AFO. But what's kind of like concerns me a little is that they introduced like this whole thing about having these spares for Shigaraki, kind of out of nowhere that we didn't really know about before, including those other kids that were there. And the only we see them like acting effectively as normal children. They didn't seem like psychopaths to me, but apparently those kids were spares, a seedbed of ferocity and hatred. None of them seem like it, but we see that Dobby burned down the entire building. So it's like, did he just like off all those kids effectively? And I don't know. That just felt like a really interesting, cool concept that just kind of got tossed into this backstory that I don't think we're going to get much expansion on because it's near the end of the series. And like that kind of like rubbed me the wrong way a little because it's like, okay, I want to know more about those kids. Where did they come from? What was their situation? How come we didn't hear about none of this before?
yeah, that okay, yeah, I would admit that kind of was a bit forced. Maybe
Yeah.
I
I
guess
mean,
if
it's a
they,
cool idea. I want to be clear
yeah,
about that, but I feel like Dobby himself, for example, is a character that was slowly built up to the point where we all were able to see what his identity was. But now we get into like the full backstory, and it's like, oh yeah, he was saved by AFO, and also he was going to be raised as a spare, and also there were these other kids there, but he burnt the place down because they couldn't control him. This all felt a little out of nowhere for a
mm,
character like Dobby who was otherwise built up. But yeah, then that was my mini rant out of the way.
okay, yeah, yeah, that does seem a bit of an issue. Would have been great to see, but hey, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the guerrilla police officer is just like, oh, this is more crap about how All for One had everything planned from the start. Okay, okay, guerrilla police officer, All for One is not Aizen.
Yeah,
don't
but
don't be don't be saying that All for One has everything exactly as planned because only Aizen gets that distinction.
what's funny is I'm not sure if they were being sarcastic, but I think one of the members, Shonen Chill, once posted. I think actually maybe in response to leaks for this chapter, I don't remember, or the chapter before. It's like AFO is basically like Aizen, but if Aizen was really bad and not Quelvin, and I'm like, that's hilarious because it's true.
It
Because they
is
write him up
true.
like, I have a character who has all the backup plans and is super evil and everything's in the palm of his hand. But like, really, was it? Because I don't feel that way, and also I don't care about him.
Yeah. So eventually the doctor says that, yeah, we gave up on Darby and let him run loose because after his body came back to life, he was up and he wasn't supposed to live for more than a month, but for some reason he did. Um, and it's revealed that the doctor is the one that's kept him alive. And he had to know what Dobby was really thinking, so he arranged a moment where they'd be alone, just the two of them. And he mentions that why I'm tickled pink, why I'm tickled pink that you realize. Like, what does that even mean?
Oh, that's just a phrase that says I'm flattered or slightly embarrassed that you recognize me. It is
All
a
right.
phrase that people say, but It's like a very old school phrase, and he's an old man, so it kind of
All
fits. I will admit Caleb did a good job with that translation.
All right. So he says, seeing this walking corpse here gave me a distinct idea of what you people were planning to do with me. And now I'm back because it seems like the perfect place for my funeral, except it's not going to be the perfect place. And Uchiko is saying like he kept his dying body tethered to this world for your a poor blazing grudge, and we actually do see what this grudge is because he mentions that, oh, I actually did come home. So that whole time when he was running away from the place, he was actually from the facility, he was actually running back home, and he was like, even though I was weaker than ever, and there was no way that I was hoping for, and there was no way that what I was hoping for was there, but he was sure something must have changed. So he's basically just being like, "Hey, Dad, I'm still alive. I may be weaker, but I'm still dedicated to the cause." Um, but as he uh, but as he went home, he noticed that Endeavor uh, he noticed firsthand what Endeavor was doing at that point, and that was what made him click. And he was like, the fact that my father just sees me as a failed creation now. He's moved on to Shoto. He's doing everything to bring the power out in Shoto, and that's what clicked with him. So I like that we got that explanation in this chapter of like why hates his father, because it wasn't for going through abuse with his father. It was for the fact that he saw his father for what he really was.
Yep, and like you said, it does explain. Like his actions all feel like logical from this point on. Where he went back home, he saw that nothing's changed, and that this family is not what he wants to come back to, and that the family itself has kind of left them in the past. So,
Yeah.
and I will also say that just like the way Ujiko, well, actually, I'll bring this up near the end. So let's just keep going.
Okay. All right.
And oh yeah,
Uh,
and Thurman on Control Chaos brought up the line, "When you surpass your limits." It's like I see what you did there, Caleb. This is like Black Clover
all
reference.
right. Oh yeah. When you surpass your limits. And it says, it's like everything you've built up is flipped around upside down. I'm focused on owning my flames so I wouldn't be so weak when we next met. This body of mine kept peeling away and falling to pieces, but I've never felt a thing. You want battle moves? I've seen them all over. Um, and then we have Schultz realizing that, yeah, my brother's been prepared to die from the start, as he continues going on a tangent. Every time that thing saved the city, every time that thing got boosted in popularity, obviously referring to All Might in this situation. Uh, it might have been referring to his father, or could it be
Yeah, no, I
referring?
think that thing is referring to Endeavor.
All right, okay, all right, because I assumed it was like referring to his All Might at some point,
I don't think
but
he had much of a connection to All Might, so
okay,
I don't.
fair enough. Um, but
Especially
no,
because I think, let me see. I think there was like a line that specifically like a minute ago. Oh yeah, oh yeah, it's like page 17, the last page. But
yeah,
that
but
line.
we'll get into it. So yeah, he sees that he sees his shrine made to him, and it's just like, to him, it's like, okay, yeah, Toya is dead at this point, and Darby is born. So yeah, seeing that, yeah, his family has moved on without him, without even confirming that if he's really dead or not, and just clicking like, yeah, this is what they see me as just a waste of space now. I'm not wanting back here. And he says, heat is energy born of living things as they move and thrive. All for one who seeks to live forever has no use for that mad heat rushing headlong towards death. The demon lord himself has to abandon that friend's flame of death. And I love this panel of just like Darby basically melting the All Might statue.
Yep, and while burning himself. If this was just great symbolism, and I think we were asking, it's like, how is All Might statue still standing? And the reason is it was standing long enough for Horikoshi to do this.
To do this, because it was just like when I first saw this part, I was like, "What is that hand?" And then I looked down, it's like, "Oh my, it's All Might's hand."
Yep. So yeah, beautiful imagery. I will
Yeah.
say that for sure.
And,
And then, of course, the last page is when he uses the word "that thing" again is what makes me say that that thing is referring to Endeavor,
okay. All right.
because once
Uh,
burned away, all that thing holds dear. So it's like, yeah, that's Endeavor.
yeah. And then Shoto's like, oh, like I said, Big Brother, not on my watch. So now that we actually have the backstory out of the way, we can finally get into the proper fight. The fight between Shoto and Dobby, brothers duking it out.
Yep, and that'll be fun to watch. Now,
Yeah.
the thing I wanted to say was reading this chapter, it made me think of something. Dobby, like the way he's like a character who kept himself alive through pure anger and hatred, he'd be the kind of super edgy character I'd love as a protagonist in almost any other manga. But in this one, he kind of feels, and yes, I planned this pun specifically for this stream, he feels a little half baked to me. So, so we
that
have a character. Yep. Did you
that
enjoy that?
I can agree with that pretty much. I mean, Dobby as a character is probably one of the better written villains for My Hero.
Yeah, and I mean that's also saying something because my hero has good villains to begin with. But I think look, one of the things with Dobby is for a while I thought Dobby was a bit of an overhyped character because people kept talking about how cool he is, and I'm like, he hasn't even been in that many fights because he's extremely delicate. And but now I think it was just like saving him up for this particular moment. So,
Yeah,
that's fine. Good.
yeah,
And the other thing is he has like really great story moments and great connections to Shoto's character and Endeavor's story and Hero's society in general. But I think where it kind of loses me at points is number one, he's almost kind of like done edgy to a weird extreme that kind of puts me off a little bit, where it's like he was supposed to have died in a month, but he survived at a pure rage. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like the series that can get away with that, some kind of thing. And two, like I said, some parts of his backstory had some things that I thought they would expand upon more. Because, like, but at the end of the day, a lot of these things are just going to go forgotten, unfortunately. Like the children asylum that they had for backup Shigaraki clones, for one thing. Like, that's a big thing. And the other thing is the fact that I guess he needed like a 3-year coma before he came back.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess that's really all I have to say on My Hero this week.
Yep.
And and of
Decent chapter.
course,
I'm looking forward to the fight.
yeah, and of course, we have to wait 2 weeks now for the next chapter.
Ah, yes. Also, good point to bring up. Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So, guess what series do you want to talk about next?
Let's see. We have a couple left. I think we have Witch Watch, Ayakashi, and what else?
Undead Unluck.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, those are all like fairly quick to talk about. I also wanted to ask you, did you want to talk about Fujimoto's one shot that came out or not?
I was debating that, but I haven't read it, and I was just like,
Oh, okay.
it's too long. It's too long.
Definitely worth the read though, when you get the chance.
Yeah, I'll read it, but like for the stream, I thought like it would probably take about 2 hours.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, it could, honestly. So yeah, in that case, let's talk about let's say Witch Watch.
Okay,
That was like Thurman's favorite chapter this week. He was saying so. I think that's also a good.
I can see why.
Yeah, it was a very good chapter, and I think we learned like a new, like we've learned that there's like chapters that involve the teacher, there's and the student and the manga writing. There's one that involves the student council, and now there's like part-time work with Kanahashi.
Yeah, part-time work with Khan, and oh my god, I've just realised what they've done on the color page. They've
What
made
do you,
Khan and Kengo into Naruto characters.
they did?
Yeah, because if you look at Khan's face, it's got whiskers on, and he's got blonde
Oh,
hair.
oh, okay. I thought those were just like they were just Halloween costumes, and he was like a cat or something. I don't know. To be honest, I was very confused with this colored page, but sure. 'Cause, like I thought, like okay, Moy looks like Frankenstein, maybe Frankenstein's monster, I should
Uh,
say.
oh,
And then
oh, and I've just realised something. The title of the chapter. Konshi's part-time job diaries, the cafe. Is that a reference to that Demon Diaries that got cancelled?
I have no idea what that is.
Uh, let me just see.
Okay, you can look that up.
Demon.
I'll just start the chapter while you're doing that. Okay, so chapter 57, part-time diaries, the cafe. So basically this is a con chapter, and where we follow him during his part-time work. Because for those who don't remember, he keeps losing money to gotcha games and things like that. So he has to keep doing part-time work in order to make money back. Anyway, so then Kanashi is like very upset in the morning, and then everyone's like, "Oh man, this is a rare sight. Why are you so down the dumps?" And then Nico apparently is the only one who talks to him about stuff because she's the one who knew a coworker of his is being very mean to him, and apparently, I guess that got to him. And so Khan's like, "Hey, do you have a spell that'll work as a pick me up?" And I'm like, "Khan, did you learn nothing from everything in this series?"
I
To
know.
Nico to be like, "Hey, Nico, can you just like magic away my problems? That'll always end badly. How does no one learn this lesson?" It is kind of almost, if it wasn't so funny, it would be kind of aggravating.
Yeah,
But it's funny because like Nico's response is, "I do have this one spell that's supposed to take depression and turn to the opposite," and then immediately they're like, "That sounds vague. Are we sure this is safe?" And Khan's like, "Bro, I don't care anymore. Just cheer me up." No, that was a bad idea. Like literally, they explained why it's a bad idea.
yeah. Also, as well, that diaries manga. It was Demon Prince Poro's diaries. Basically, the series the author of Mission Yosakura family did before Mission Yosakura.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah.
I guess
So
that
that
one must have gotten next. Do
it did. It did. So that
What was it
might
about?
be the reference.
You remember what it was about?
Uh, I'll just try. Let me. Uh, the manga centers on a demon from the underworld who comes to the human world.
Huh.
That's
Okay. All
basically
right.
that's basically the synopsis that we got.
Okay, I can see why I probably got axed then.
Yeah.
Anyway, this parent spell is called the reverse sense, and I immediately knew where this was going. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's hilarious. Because Khan's immediately like, "I feel super hyped. I can't wait to get to work." And then he's like, "Oh, it's almost time. I better hurry and take my time getting to work." And I'm like, everyone's confused, and I'm like, "How are you confused?" I immediately know what's happening.
Yeah, he's seeing it as being late when in fact he's early.
Yep, because everything's the opposite to him. I don't know why these characters are not very smart.
I know.
Anyway, so then we cut over to the cafe, and the manager of the cafe is like, "Goodness, it's hot out today." Urahara, I expect we'll see a lot of ice cream parfait orders. Teach, uh, basically Khan, that's his last name, how to make them, please. And she's like, "Yes, sir." And we get her name, Kokoro Urahara.
Yeah. And
Um,
can I just say something quickly?
yeah, yeah, of
Uh,
course.
as soon as I saw Urahara, I was just like, they better not make a Bleach reference here.
I was waiting for it too,
Yeah,
but they
I was
really
just like,
didn't.
it makes so much sense. Urahara and Yoriichi had a kid together, and she escaped into the Witch Watch world.
Yep. And then we get into her mental state. Now, of course, they set it up to be like, "Oh, she probably really hates Khan," from that panel on the bottom of page 5. But then immediately she's like, "Oh, and I have romantic feelings for him."
Yeah.
And
So
I'm just like, "Yep."
basically, tsundere, I shall soon say. I shall soon say.
Yeah, and I'll just skip over to that because basically she's just complimenting a bunch of things about him, and she goes, What's with me and my unconscious habit of picking on boys I like?" And I love this quote, and I took a picture of it. "I'm so dumb. Why can't I just say what I mean? Real life tsunderes are just verbally abusive people with poor social skills." And I'm immediately like, "Yes, this is the most accurate thing I've seen all day." And even Shonen and Chill, they are really not liking Witch Watch recently. They also appreciated this particular joke.
Okay, yeah. And of course, because it's opposite, even though it's really hot, Khan enters the place with like winter gear on, and the boss is just like, "What are you wearing?"
And like a jacket and earmuffs. Are you not hot? He's like, well, why would I be? It's frigid out there. And he's like, no, it's not. It's sweltering. Making looking at you makes me sweat. And he's just like, well, get to work. You're still late. He's like, yes, sir. I'll get around to it eventually. You trying to antagonize me? Oh man, I was sure reading all this, the joke was going to be he was going to get fired for doing all
Yeah,
this. But we'll get to that part.
yeah, we will get
Um,
to that part.
then we see Urahara, which weirdly is easier enough to say than Kokoro for me for some reason. She says, "What's with the snow gear in September? Is he trying to get my attention?" I'm like, "Why would you think that? Why would be that the first thing that comes up?"
Yeah, yeah, why would it be?
And I love how even the mangaka in his exposition is like, "It should be obvious, but I'm just going to explain that this reverse sense reverses all the person's senses." It's like I couldn't have made this more obvious, guys. Come on. Like this is what I mean. Just as a quick side tangent to what we were saying with the Kane, exposition is sometimes needed to make sure the audience, like the really people who are not paying attention to the story, are getting it. Can be used just like in small bursts like this, but you don't need like multiple pages of panels explaining it. You can just do like some speech bubbles here. It's like, yeah, and this is what the spell does if you haven't caught on. Anyway, so then Khan immediately goes, "Good morning, senpai." And then she's like, "You waltzing in here late, giving me a dopey smile." To be honest, I don't understand her insults at all here. She says something about a smilodon
Yeah,
and
and
about
I'm just like, yeah, that confused me as well. The Smilodon. I'm like, do you even know what a Smilodon was?
I don't know.
It was the same.
Something about a Wayne Right or Wayne Wrong. I don't. What's a Wayne Right
No,
even? I don't,
Smilodon was the saber-toothed cat.
oh, okay. Oh, all right. I don't. I'm still not sure what a Wayne Right is. That's not. I'm not appearing anything here. But whatever. Like her insult made no sense. Point being, and then
Yeah.
of course, she was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Khan. I don't know why I'm like this." And then immediately, Khan's just like, oh, "That felt so good." I love that expression, and I immediately knew where this page joke was going. And he goes, "Senpai, your insults are the best. Can you give me more of them, please?" And she's just like so weirded out. Like, what's this attitude of yours? Don't give me that look of utter bliss. You're gross and creepy. You look like a slow and stupid turtle slug, which again, that makes no sense. But he's immediately like in full masochist mode. And everyone, including me, is terrified of this because she keeps insulting him, calling him a lazy dog. He's like, yes, give me more.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God, this is like people with mocking, like, just like those people on the internet who's, I don't know if you saw it with Viz. They recently posted something with Makima for Chainsaw Man out of nowhere. And then I think it was the one where she was telling Denji he's a good dog. And immediately all the responses below were what you would expect from that thing.
Yeah.
Conjuring
Oh.
exact response.
Oh my god. But yeah. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, okay, I'm calm, I'm calm. So continue with the chapter. Ura was like, okay, before the cafe gets too busy, I need to teach you how to make an ice cream perfite, and he already makes it, and and it's like, you already know, and he's like, and yep. I've had lots of jobs. I'm used to picking up skills, and I've always watched you make them. And she's getting really flustered by this, and like, oh, I need to tell you, okay, I'm gonna say it, but of course says, I hate your stinking guts. Like, even if she's trying to force herself to say it, she can't bring herself to say it.
But he's still pretty happy about the insult. I also want to bring up, I think this is a nice point to bring up with Khan, that he actually probably has like a versatility of skills after doing a bunch of part time work. So that's kind of nice. In a weird way, he had like some side development as a character,
Yeah.
thanks to like all these misadventures, so to speak. Anyway, so then literally she said, okay, taste and scarf it down like the pig you are. And I'm like, oh my God, these insults go a little too hard. And he's extremely happy about it. And immediately, of course, with the ice cream, Connie's like, oh, it's hot. It's so hot. And he's just like, what's wrong? It's like, my tongue got burnt. It's like, what are you talking about? You brainless. It's ice cream. It's literally the opposite of burning hot. And then she puts an ice cube on his tongue. He spits it out. And he's like, that was red hot. You dumped red hot lead onto my mouth. It's like, you're just bullying me, trying to get me to quit. And man, I don't know. Like apparently, Shonen Show thought this was much, but I thought the joke lasted just long enough for it didn't overstay its welcome. It was
Ye-
close, but it was pretty hilarious with the
yeah,
expressions and the art.
especially the one that we get in a minute where after he's like, okay, it's piping hot, even though it's ice cream, it's piping hot. He said, well, I guess we're famous for our piping hot ice cream. Like, how, Colin, you should be like more. How brain dead? I have to admit, how brain dead can you be here, Colin? It's ice cream.
I remember, I think once I had like ice cream with like really warm, like hot chocolate, or not hot chocolate, just melted chocolate on top. And like the hot and cold really went together. I'm imagining it's like that, but just straight up spicy food to him, I
Yeah,
guess.
I guess, which makes his mouth, his lips pucker like a fish.
Yep. And apparently Urahara finds this charming somehow. This girl makes no sense, but whatever.
Yeah,
Anyway, Khan's like, sorry for the wait to the customers. And he goes, here's your Korean hot pot. He's like, we didn't order Korean hot pot. Also, this looks like ice cream that we did order. It's like, my apologies, miss. That's your spicy, hot and spicy parfait. And he's just like, what are you saying? Are you some kind of prankster part timer? And I like how that's everyone's perception of this because this is the only way to make sense of it.
yeah,
And then immediately we turn around and we get in honestly, my opinion, a very cliche scene.
yeah. With a guy who's not happy with the surface and claims he's being bossed around and he's going to get evidence to show how crummy the joint is and he's attacking Urahara, but and he's like, oh, you've um, you've got to pay for the emotional damage that has been caused to me. And then this way we got Khan stepping in, trying to be the badass that he's trying to be. But of course, instead of being a badass, he's just laughing his ass off.
Yep. And before we get more into that, I just want to say last chapter was all about TikTok. And I feel like the emotional damage thing is actually a TikTok reference. I'm pretty sure most people who don't use TikTok wouldn't understand that
I
reference.
I have no idea what that reference is.
Basically, there's this YouTuber slash TikToker who he has like, he's hilarious and has like a whole thing about Asian parents, one character representing his father effectively. And like in one of the bits he had, like they play a video game, the video game set to Asian level difficulty, and the character in the video game dies from quote unquote emotional damage. And the father expresses exacerbation as emotional damage in the funniest way. And people use that audio over and over again on Twitter. Anytime someone got emotionally hurt, they would just play the emotional damage, as in to say, ooh, you got burned, effectively.
Okay, all
So
right.
actually, I do think this was a TikTok reference just based on the last chapter. So I just want to point that out before we move
I
on.
I guess. And the customer is like, "Oh, what's so funny?" And Cora's like, "Oh, it's always making me burst my guts, but you hurt my senpai. You'll regret that." And Ura's like, "Oh, come on, you can't get mad now." And he explains like why the customer is in the wrong here.
Yeah,
But
the short version is basically the customer got in trouble for using his phone, which I found confusing. But apparently, literally, there's a sign on the thing that says refrain from making calls. And there's a rule that was stated. So therefore, the restaurant's not at fault because we had the rule stated right in front of your face. And he also says we reserve the right to refuse service, and we're in our right to bar customers causing a disturbance. And he asked them to leave. And then I love this next panel, which again I think even Shonen and Chill enjoyed this, and I'll find a use for it someday. He's fighting them off with pure facts and logic.
yeah, oh, that's going to be a meme on Twitter at some point.
It has to be a meme because it's just like this is exactly how people fight on Twitter. And then he literally says, "I made a valid complaint about an employee's attitude." And then he's just like, "Ha, you just, sir. You didn't complain. You grabbed her wrist enough that she helped in pain. That qualifies as criminal assault." I love the way they drew that too, just because he looks so serious. And then they kind of have like this whole back and forth of him saying, "Oh, then you threatened defamation and you caused a disruption of business." and then you caused extortion. And if you don't leave right now, this counts as unlawful trespass. And then the customer's like, okay, fine, fine, we'll leave. And he's just like, ha ha, but you can't leave yet, sir, because that would be running from the cops. And then apparently Khan just called cops. And I'm thinking, man, this really did do the opposite of him, because this was super like big brain moment here. And Khan is the
Yeah,
stupidest character in the entire
yeah.
series.
So then we cut over to the house, which still doesn't have Nemu in it. I'm gonna
Ah,
keep
yeah,
saying that. I'm gonna keep saying that until we get Nemu in the house.
that is fair.
Yeah,
And then Nico was like, remember that spell I cast? I think I might have reversed all his senses. And then Moy's like, I don't get it, but this sounds like you messed up, Nico, just like you always
again.
do. Like, why do they keep doing this?
Yeah,
Anyway,
I
so then they tell Khan, thank you. You really saved us today. You resolved that so neatly. It was unexpected, but impressive. How would you like a permanent job with us? Because at this point, he's a part timer. And then Urahara is like, I know I've been treating you unfairly and harsh, and I'm sorry. You were really cool today. And then we have Nico and Moy coming through. It's like, hey, Khan. And Khan is like, why would you say such horrible things? That's abuse of power. I quit. I quit. And man is like, why would you do that? And then Urahara is like, that part is attractive too. And
yeah.
Nico's going to remove the spell.
So I guess now we've got we have Nemu and Wolf ship. We have Moe and Nico ship. We have nothing for Mayuru yet, but now we have
Miharu, yeah.
Miharu, but now we have Korn and Urahara ship.
Yep, basically we have like all the relationships set up, and that's just nice. And I'm assuming Nico stopped the spell before Khan could quit, so hopefully this means he has a permanent job,
Yeah.
and we'll have Urahara as a recurring character. Because
Oh,
Sundar, I'm usually not a huge fan of Sundares, but at least this is a self-aware one, so
yeah,
that makes it better.
yeah. It's kind of like what's her face from Hey Arnold? Did you ever watch Hey Arnold?
Oh yeah, I grew up with that. Well,
Yeah.
nah, I shouldn't say grew up with it, but I've seen it. Yeah,
What was the name of the girl in Hey Arnold?
Helga. You're thinking of Helga.
Helga, yeah, it kind of reminds me of that, how she was kind of self-aware.
Yeah, but like not. This is to a comedic extent, and I like it. And I like how basically no matter what Khan does, she finds it attractive. It's like this doesn't even make sense at this point. Just get married, okay?
Yeah. Urahara, just take him out on a date. No, actually, don't do that, because that'll be a bad idea. Because Carl will probably get Nico to play a spell on him.
Oh man, that's exactly what's gonna happen. I at least at some point want a character to be like, okay, guys, listen, we got to stop having Nico cast spells on us every time there's a problem. It never
Yeah.
worked out.
Actually, if Nemu came in the house, she'd probably be the one to say that. It's like,
You know what? I
why
would love that.
why is it that every time we have a problem, we have to use Nico, because it always backfires on us?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, pretty.
So, but you can't really predict Witch Watch. So they could do literally anything.
Could
You could have
literally do
Student
anything.
Council, teacher
I,
manga, a serious arc. Who knows?
oh my god! You know what would be hilarious? A serious arc about jeans.
Oh,
a
yeah.
serious arc about Moe and the case of the missing jeans. Oh my god! I love this series so much.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah,
I
that was.
don't know how people cannot like this series, but I guess it's just a difference in comedy taste.
It's just different. Like I said in Shonen OG's video on Gintama, Witch Watch is the definition of modern Gintama.
It really is after like watching it, which makes me want to watch Gintama a little more.
Yeah. So anyway, we've got two series left: Undead Unluck and Ayakashi Triangle.
Okay, let's do Undead Unluck next because I think Ayakashi is usually when we wrap up with.
Yeah.
Sorry that we finish up randomly, but we can use it as our finisher because this would be. It's like a weird chapter to finish on, but I think it's all the more reason to. Because Undead Unluck, I like the way. I know I reference again Shonen Chill quite a few times in the stream, but I like the way they describe this chapter. It's like I'm very confused, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm very confused as well. but at the same time, it's a lot better than some of the other chapters.
Yeah. I mean, I think for this week, it was probably not as good as some of the chapters, but it was in the middle.
But yeah.
Good, somewhere in
Uh,
the middle. Because like
anyway,
Akane was really good, Yozakura, Sakamoto, but then and Witch Watch, of course, but then this one, and at least for me, My Hero was not super great.
yeah.
And
So
physics too.
I'm gonna quickly go to the toilet. So would you
Do you want me to
be all
start?
right
Or?
to start?
Yeah, fine then.
All right.
I'll start off. Chapter, I have to write down the time anyway. So starting off with 239:30. Undead Unluck 106. Human rules are always. That's kind of a weird way to title it. But basically, this kind of starts off a little in the middle of the conversation we saw from last time. Ruin's like, I told you not to underestimate him. Your kind negators are, unlike you and your kind, negators are a group of oppressed beings. So many are pains in the neck. And he's like, enough prattle, vessel. But anyway, handle your things your way. I'll do the same. I've got to do something for a friend. I wasn't too sure what he meant by this when I first read this chapter, but it could have something to do with Ghost, to be honest. But we'll get to that in a second. Because Ruin says, I need to prepare a nice big feast for him. Yeah, it definitely is for Ghost because he said he promised some souls. He should be wrapping up a job now. He'll be back any moment. So then Ruin is just about to order everybody, all these zombie 5 people, to off themselves by wrapping their hands around their necks. And then Ruin, this one, Seal starts having all the Umas and Andy and Lucy come out of his body. So where'd the last chapter end? Where Andy goes, ha, I sealed you up. Yeah, physically at least. And then Ruin is like, ha, Andy is like, I finally found you, Ruin. But of course he's a ghost, and ghosts can't punch things because that would be dumb. So then Andy's just like, huh, okay, I'm going right through him. So let's not worry about taking on Ruin. I need to find Fuko. Then immediately Seal just gets a hold of him, which I was very surprised by. He was able to do the turnaround real quick. And Ruin was also surprised. And I like how this explanation of his, where he's like, highly intelligent realists usually struggle to concept existence of souls. Andy, there's a good example. Honestly, I thought you'd have a problem too. And Seal's like, don't belittle me. My Seal ability is fitting for a future king. It's perfect. If the rule isn't broken, there's something afoot that escaped my notice. And I think basically they're saying that my Seal should have kept him, but the fact that it didn't means he used a concept that I was not aware of, in this case, the concept of the soul. So he's saying that Seal was able to accept the soul very quickly just because it's something that defied him. So therefore, he needs to accept that this thing that exists. So that's a weird way to put it, but I kind of like this speech of people like Andy and Seal would usually have trouble accepting souls, while people like Lucy, who reads Peter Pan for fun, would have a very easy time.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm back now.
Yep. So yeah, I'm on page 6.
Yeah. I'm on that page as well.
Okay, cool. So, and then interestingly, he says you were chosen regulator for a reason. You're sharp as attack. So I guess God chose Seal as a regulator. So I guess there might have been a list of regulators to choose from.
Well, he did. Well, it seems like from his overall attitude, he seems to be more like, I'm a messenger of God. So obviously, God chose him.
Yeah, that's also true. Anyway, so then Andy is just asking where Fuko and Ghost are. And then Ruin's like, man, you have a one-track mind. I'm like, yeah, you're right. He does. That's how we got to this point.
Yeah, and also as well, like, it is a valid question. Where are they at this moment in time?
Yep, and then they kind of answer that question and say, oh, why they could be anywhere. And Ruin's like, he simply left to go make some friends. And then that we get cut out to Nico, actually.
Yeah,
and Nico's staring at Ghost and Fuko in a cage and this random woman.
Oh yeah, I was just like, I didn't notice Fuko in the cage until now.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, no, she's there.
No, yeah, but you said you wanted more to do with Nico, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one thing I did like about this chapter, because it's like, yes, finally getting this backstory, because Nico has been a character they kept referencing and showing off. But again, this author has a weird way of just kind of putting character backstories at random points in the story. that
I
at least
guess
somewhat in retrospect work, but also to me feels, I don't know, a little haphazard. Eh.
I guess this woman, because Nico has a daughter, doesn't he? Let
Yeah,
me. Yes,
yeah,
this might be Nico's wife.
possibly, because I think someone else pointed out, and thank you to whoever pointed this out on, I think, Reddit. This woman, if you look at her on page 9 when she says Nico, you actually see a scar right around her belly. For those who aren't aware, this is a very traditional scar for a woman who had a C-section, actually. A
Oh,
C-section
oh,
being an
oh,
alternate way to deliver birth.
yeah. So she might have died in childbirth.
Yep, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah, could,
actually very
yeah,
good show, don't tell. I
yeah,
missed it
because
actually.
yeah, because it says on his wiki page, Miko is his daughter and then unnamed wife. So this is very likely his wife.
Yeah, probably like you said, dad in childbirth, and it's an interesting way to show it off because we see the ghost with ghost, and also we see her emblem, saying that she was a part of Union, and two, we see, of course, the cesarean scar,
Yeah. So
and also
I
I think she looks a lot like her daughter too, but
yeah,
just
yeah.
nail that.
Let me look at a picture of the daughter. Yeah, yeah, the eyes are the same. They have the same shaped eyes, from what I can see from the daughter.
Yep.
Yeah,
So, very good show don't tell on this character. I will say that's the part of the story I did like because this means we're getting Nico and backstory, and we also have an idea of where it's going. It's just I don't know why specifically Ghost is interested, but we'll see.
maybe Miko, his daughter has some ability that is that he's interested in.
Possibly. I
Because
don't really go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're going to get to it because we have on pages 13, just kind of skipping ahead a bit, we have on Ruin mentioning unclear, unfair, unequal, unintelligible, and unsettling. So maybe this might be indicating that Miko might have one of these abilities that Ghost is interested in.
Um, Maybe because you think she might be Negator.
I think she might be a negator.
Yeah, that could fit. But I wonder what her ability is.
Yeah. But yeah, anyway,
Oh, you know what would be interesting? Because they
go
kind of
ahead.
almost threw out this concept after Gina. But for a while in the beginning of the story, there was this whole thing about how negators can effectively kill other negators in Union and then take their spot. Maybe she's one of those characters, like
Mm,
Gina and that other
maybe.
dude who I don't remember in the beginning, who got killed off. Um, and then like someone else took her spot. And if that's the case, maybe one of those characters are one of the ones we know now, and they could tie into the backstory. I just thought of that just now.
Yeah, that could work. But yeah, moving back to the chapter itself, we have uh, Annie saying friends as Lucy is reunited with her mother, but her mother at this point is zombified, and she's like, "Oh, we can save her, right?" And Uma's like, "Hey, blood, weren't you supposed to have captured everyone here?" And he's like, "Oh, quit complaining. My juniors can't do everything." And Ruin's question like, why does Lucy want to save her mother? And she's like, my mother's the only one I've got, and this is a concept on that on Ruin has no concept of, I guess, like no concept
Yeah,
of
technically,
relationships or
because
anything.
he counters with there's only one of any given person, right? And honestly, that was actually a pretty good counter.
Hmm.
And then Lucy, of course, says moms are special, but of course, that idea doesn't come across to someone who doesn't have any parents, lovers, siblings, companions, as he says.
Yeah.
So it should ruin. It's just like you say she's special, but isn't every person unique? and special, and therefore don't matter in the long run.
Yeah.
And I love, and then the next page, I think the author went a little too hard on this one. I think this kind of took away from the chapter for me because he went, the rules of humans are so unclear, unfair, unequal, unintelligible, and unsettling. And then I like the Shonen Chill joke they made here, where it's like, yeah, this is would be like if Jujutsu Kaisen said, "This really is our sorcerer fight," or "My Hero." This really is our My Hero Academia, because he's basically saying all the unwords, and he's just like this.
Yeah.
It ties in everything conceptually, and I'm like, yes, yes, I get it. You hammered this concept home.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. Like, yeah, this concept was just okay, we get it. We get it. And he counters like, don't you have no, Lucy's saying this like, oh, don't you have a mum and a dad too? And it's like, Lucy, haven't you been learning anything?
To be fair, I don't think she doesn't know anything about these regulators at this point, so I don't
Yeah.
blame her too much. And talking with people about this chapter, it seems that some people are still under the impression that Ruin might be human himself. Maybe he doesn't remember anything, um, and so in their mind, he thinks he should have parents. So Lucy thinking that might just be because, oh, weren't you human at one point? But I still
Maybe.
think I think he's like Seal, where he just looks human or in the shape of a human, but isn't really human. Especially with what
Okay.
he says uh, a few pages or the next page
Yeah.
afterwards when he says what Lucy's begging him to stop. He's like, I don't know what you mean because the one who gave birth to me is God. And so I'm like, yeah, I thought that's how it worked with regulators. Also, the art's, of course, very cool.
Very cool. Yeah. And also gotta do it. Um. So Unruin, yeah, you do have a father. You do have a father. Then he's God, and you have a brother. He's called Jesus.
Oh man, Jesus of this world, that would be something.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Actually,
at the same,
now that I think about it, he kind of does have that Jesus depiction, just with the long flowing hair.
yeah, and someone else brought up the fact that if you look at his scar, it kind of resembles
The
like
sun.
when Andy had his card on his forehead. So maybe Ruin is like similar to Andy, where this Ruin is like an artificial personality, the way Andy's an artificial personality for Victor.
Okay, fair enough.
I
That
don't
would make a
necessarily
lot.
buy that, but I wanted to bring it up because it's an interesting enough idea.
It's an interesting enough idea, and if it did happen, that would make a little bit of sense. Just depends how it's executed, but again, I've just got to say the thing on his chest being the sun. Like, is that meant to be a reference to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit?
Oh man, I could see that actually. I I didn't even think of that, but good point. But the seal also has that, so I just assumed it was just an insignia for God because God is
Oh,
literally the sun in this world. Because Luna is the moon, I guess, and acting in the middle, and then there's sun, which is God, and Earth, which is everybody else.
yeah.
Uh,
And then
anyway,
we
moving
have
onward, we see like someone got stricken with blood, except wouldn't make sense for that to be Lucy because Lucy's a ghost. You can't hit a ghost. So I thought, okay, so did the mom get hit? But no, then we see Ruin's arm get chopped off. And we see a familiar character saying, how sad, you have no one, huh? So not one solitary soul you would risk your life to protect. That's a shame because I have two. And we see Rip.
it's Rip. We got Rip back. I was wondering when Under were going to get involved.
Yeah, me too. And it felt a little out of nowhere, but what I said in the server is basically it's out of nowhere, but Rip is cool, so I will allow this. And
Yeah,
also, it's weird to me that Rip, like, Unruin was able to easily get away from the other negators before. Rip just comes out of nowhere and chops off his arm.
I
I mean,
know.
obviously, for Ruin, that doesn't mean anything because I think you could just grow it back, but still, I think basically we're going to see Rip versus Ruin next week. That's what's going to happen. Some people are thinking Rip might die here. I don't know if I believe that because I feel like I want to see Rip survive a loop because that's kind of been his thing for a while. But yeah, either way, a fight's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to play out.
Yeah, I don't either. Maybe
I think Rip is missing more limbs though now. He
yeah, and just begs the
It reminds me a
question.
lot of Phil at this point because he's just mostly artifact, less human.
Yeah, yeah, it just begs the question, like if Unruin could have easily taken out Foucault, like how much how easy is he going to be able to take out Rip?
Yeah, it is a good question, and I don't know because Rip shouldn't have even been able to do this much, but he did. So,
Yeah. Oh, we'll just have to wait and
oh, but
see.
I just realized, I just remembered something. Rip's
Oh,
power, he basically, I was saying that Ruin could probably just grow his limb back, but literally Rip's
oh,
power is to prevent
yeah,
it from
it's
happening. I
on
just,
repair because that's what his power is, on repair.
yeah. Okay, so this could be a good fight.
Yeah. Rip versus Unruin. So Unruin versus Unrepaired. What? Who would win in that fight?
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know, and that's kind of it for Undead Unluck for me. It was
Yeah.
overall a decent chapter. I will say some, and I'm excited for Nico and his backstory and what we'll learn in this fight too. But I think at the same time, it just in and of itself, it's just more of a transitionary chapter, and the whole "oh, my mom is special" thing just felt a little kind of cringy, and the fact that Seal was able to quickly subdue Andy felt a little anticlimactic. So, mixed bag for me on Dead on Luck this week.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. But yeah, on to Ayakashi Triangle.
Yep,
So
last series for
last
this week.
series. The last series. And again, I would say probably one of my favorites of the week because we finally got to see more of the Ayakashi world.
Well, barely, but yeah.
Yeah, barely, but at least we got to see some of it, and actually threw me for a loop that I was not expecting. Pun very much intended there.
Ah, yeah, we'll talk about that because
We'll talk. We'll talk about what I think is gonna happen. What I think is gonna happen because I
yeah,
feel
because I saw you say something. Yeah.
like if we're gonna go where I think we're gonna go, I'll say what I think it is at the end.
Okay.
But yeah, we um we start off the chapter by explaining like okay, there are seven basically gateways interspread in the mountains, so you have to go through them correctly to reach the two worlds, the Ayakashi world and the human world. So I'm glad we got an explanation of why humans can't just aren't just like crossing into the Ayakashi world like crazy. So I'm glad that we got that and explanation here, and we have them saying the Ayakashi village of Uramiko. Ever since we came here to make Suzu's outfit, they've occasionally been visiting to interact with the Ayakashis, and of course, Matsuri being an exorcist ninja, he has to be blindfolded. And they're making their way back to the human world, and it's towards the end of July, and um, we get them thinking like, oh, if I become Shoga's girlfriend, I wonder if that will help him get used to girls. So basically, quoting what Shoga's sister said in the last few chapters, and Suzu is having none of it and say, "Don't take what his sister said seriously." And Matsu's like, "Yeah, I'm not going to go out with him real, but I want to try and help him." So I like that the fact that Matsuri considers Shogo a friend, a friend and a rival to at least say like, okay, yeah, I don't want to go out with him, but for the sake of him, I'll help him out in this one occasion. So I'm flying into a summer festival, and um, Susu's like, "Oh, I understand you want to help him. He's a good guy and all, but think about how I feel. I would never be okay with that." And Susu just, she's like, "Susu, you had one. They're basically like, Susu, you had one job to do. Just go through this gateway in a certain way, and you've just blown it."
Yep. And then you knew immediately she did that, something really bad was going to happen. I mean, I do kind of like how, in a way, she's very conflicted with, okay, obviously, I don't want my boyfriend dating somebody else. But at the same time, I'm happy he wants to help his friend. So, and she's also a little frustrated because, of course, he didn't want to officially start going out till he went back to being a boy. So
Yeah,
it's hilarious. And also, interestingly, she thinks to herself, Matsuri, I turned into a girl. I wouldn't have to worry about these things. We would have just fallen in love and things would have been fine.
yeah.
And then immediately,
I
oh,
think
yeah.
when I think you know where I'm going for with this. I think this is foreshadowing what's probably going to happen in the next chapter.
Well, we'll see. You can explain to me when we get to the end because I don't know
Yeah,
yet.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna explain when we get to the end. So then we have a flash of light happening. We see Suzu in a forest, and then immediately flash of light, and we see her in this park, and she's like, "But I was in mountains, and there's cherry blossoms." And immediately, as I said, saw that with cherry blossoms, I'm like thinking like, "Oh crap! Koichiro's made it into the Ayakashi world. Quick, Suzu, get away!"
Oh, yep. And then we immediately see Shirogane and basically male Matsuri back in their entanglement. We've seen them a bit before. It's actually pretty easy to pick up on what's going on here
Yeah,
because
because
Shirogane, like the way they're acting and behaving, you can immediately figure out what's going on, even though Suzu didn't figure it out until another Suzu came in and tried to
yeah,
and save Shirogane.
and also as well, we finally get like a timeline here because we have the younger Susu in her mind saying it's that day 4 months ago, so it's been 4 months since the start of the series.
Yeah, which is interesting. It's not that much time. I would have expected more, but
No,
four
really
months.
hasn't.
Interesting. Yeah, and then the younger voice is explaining,
Well,
"I prefer not to interfere since you're the main personality," which is kind of the author's way of saying this is why we haven't seen much of her.
yeah, and
But
also going back to that 4 months thing, it could be worse because One Piece had its time skip in like chapter 560, and from that point since chapter one, that had only been like 6 months.
oh wow, that
Yeah,
is huh.
yeah,
Weird. Okay, well, I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. Anyway, so then the child explains what happened. It's like, okay, Susan, remember how the one thing we were supposed to do was to go through the safe route between all the gates? Well, you decided to go away from the path, and now we're lost in time and space.
yeah. So,
And apparently, this is
so
what's called being spirited away.
yeah, so I'm just like, oh my god, they made the Spirited Away reference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which I think it probably is just a thing in Japan, so it might not necessarily be a reference, but probably is.
yeah. Uh, but the way I saw it, like, but because we've strayed away from it, got lost in space and time, all I was thinking was like, this would be a perfect time for the Doctor to come in with his TARDIS.
Oh, yeah, really, it would. Man. And
Yeah,
then she basically realizes she's in the past at this point, which pretty obvious. And then she,
but I liked
hears
it because it did. I just want to say I liked it because it did throw me for a loop. Like, okay, we're in the past. We've done time travel. Done. I think that I'm okay with.
well, we'll again discuss that a little bit because with what's happening in this chapter. But anyway, Matsuri is coming in and saying, "Hey, Susie, what are you doing here? You just left with the cat." And then she's like, "Wait, then this Matsuri is," and then like sneaks up and just like straight up assaults him, just like literally straight up assaults him outside in a public park,
Yeah.
and is
Uh,
like, "Oh, this is definitely a boy's body," and tries to go for a kiss.
and then Matsuri is just like, what is going on here? And uses his wind powers to knock Susie back. And
And she's like,
he,
"You're definitely that cat transformed into Suzu.
yeah,
It's so easy to tell. Suzu would never touch me like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's a good point. Suzu's definitely changed a lot."
yeah, Suzu has definitely changed a lot. And he realizes like, oh, your clothes are different from what you're wearing today. Yeah, so it's like you're not
That's
fooling
also
anyone.
technically true.
Yeah, that is
Actually, don't
technically
blame Matsuri for this at all because this makes sense. Because if your childhood friend just randomly starts assaulting you and doesn't look like what she just did, it's obvious that the first thing would be, it's like, this is an imposter. This is
yeah.
definitely an imposter.
So then we see
And
Suzu. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, then Suzu gears up in her Ayakashi medium gear, and then uses it to somehow disappear. Um, and then Matsu's like, "Ha! I knew it was an illusion, stupid cat." And then Suzu's just crying herself like, Matsuri yelled at me. And then I'm like, yes, of course he yelled at you. You literally tried to assault him. This isn't okay behavior, Suzu.
Yeah.
But then she was like, yeah, this is Matsuri from 4 months ago. If you approach him like that, of course he'll think you're a fake. And then I like how Suzu has like no reflection on. It's like, man, I've definitely become a way more aggressive than I used to be 4 months ago. Because I think this would have been a good time for her to realize that.
Yeah, definitely. And then we have her saying, "If Matsui hadn't turned into a girl, and that is my fault." Before we see Mini Suzu saying, "Your guilt is caught up in this time and location. That feeling may have brought it us here, but we can stop it. The jitsu that Shirogane will cast on Matsui after that. Let's take back the future that you were supposed to have." And this is where I hope you've got where I'm going with this, because the fact that they've mentioned that Suzu, if Matsui hadn't turned into a girl, I wouldn't have had to worry about these things. And they're talking about the gender swap. I think you know where I'm going with this.
I don't. Where are you going with this?
Suzu getting turned into a boy.
Oh, okay, that's where you're going with this. And I thought that's where I was going too, but then the way the chapter ends on page 19, it says, let's take it back, the future you were supposed to have. It makes me think that the direction the series is actually going in is, well, at least this arc is going to attempt to go in, is potentially like Susie's going to try to prevent the reverse gender swap technique. But I'm hoping that doesn't actually happen because
No,
then we're
no,
going to have some time paradoxes.
yeah, because then we're going to have some time paradoxes. But the way I can back up my theory is this is like Mini Suzu, and she's kind of a bit sneaky as well. And the fact that Suzu is referred to as the king of Ayakashis.
When
King.
did the mini say that?
No, no, no. The Mini's not saying that. Like, but it's just her title as like the king of Ayakashis.
Oh,
And the
okay.
fact king usually refers to a male.
Okay, right. And I mean, I was also thinking about the gender swap thing because it would make sense if they flipped it on its head that maybe Suzu could understand where Matsu's coming from. But
Yeah,
at the same
I,
time, I don't think that's where it's going just because based on the wording of the actual, her guilt is the fact that the event happened and now she's
yeah.
back in the past before it happened. So I think she's going to attempt to stop it, but I'm
She
hoping
might she might attempt to stop it, but it might work on it might happen to her. And in her mind, at that point, she'd probably be like, "Oh well, now I'm a boy. He's a girl. We can be in a relationship together. I have no guilt at all."
maybe. But I don't think she'll stick that way. I think she'll revert back before she goes back in time. And just because I think like the whole thing here will be a lesson in, unless of course, because they did bring up the summer festival or something. Maybe she'll go see to that before the reversing is done, like
Yeah,
the chapter.
yeah.
Mm,
Oh, yeah. But I honestly would love it if it did go that route. That Suzu actually had the gender swap happen on her as well.
yeah, and I did think about that. I just kind of rolled it out after I read the last page, but we'll see.
We'll see. But that was where I was going for. But please, I want that to happen because the comedy potential would be so great.
It would, especially because like a lot of Susan's personality is somewhat excusable in the fact that she is like a girl. But if we had that same attributes in a guy, it would come off very different.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like that's how double standards work.
And then Suzu would be, and then people would be like calling her out and being and then Suzu would be calling them out and being like, "Hey, you guys have no problem with me doing this when I was a girl."
Yeah, it's like yeah, that's how it works. Susan, you guys can't do these kind of things.
Yeah, but yeah, very enjoyable chapter of Ayakashi. Really enjoyed it.
Yep, it was a fun chapter. I'm just kind of hoping for no time paradoxes, and then I'll be good. The one other thing I wanted to say is potentially, if if instead of going the way like Lucas think it's going to go, if instead it goes just the way Suzu is going to try to do some stuff, but it doesn't work out, I wonder if it's because again, time travel has different mechanics depending on what universe you talk about. But if in this universe it's the events of the past have already occurred, it could be that Suzu does some stuff and learns something in the past that will help us inform things of stuff in the future. And like, oh, we didn't know about this before because we didn't see the story from this perspective before. So I'm thinking that there's like elements that we'll learn a little bit later.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So, anything else for Akashi?
Mm, no, I think I'm good. So I think we can safely end it there.
All right. Thanks for everybody who stuck for our 3 hour stream. And like I said, timestamps might be a little later today because I have some stuff I need to do, but they'll be up eventually.
Yeah, and hopefully this week I'll be able to get my Yosako Family chapter review out. But until then, we will see you guys later.